Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel and video game news. Today is Friday, September 8th. So, let's see, we got several new things here and yet another update, which the whole idea of Steam automatically updating Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel seems to have been thrown out the window because it's totally not happening. Login missions, celebrating 5 billion card pack openings. It's a little interesting. I'm still not really sure why that is triggering. I didn't look it up to investigate it. Yeah, it's a little interesting that they're keeping that number metric, but most games keep tons of metrics. A new selection pack, Galactic Evolution, is here. I guess now, not in a couple days. Now. Why are we getting a double audio when I click back here? And then a new secret pack, the Noble Knights of Crimson Flowers, is available too. Yeah, that sounds like an audio glitch. I was having some weirdness on my computer, so I opted to double check just like whether my GPU's fan was set to performance mode or normal mode, and maybe because it looks like because I changed all of the settings in the BIOS or even updated the firmware on the BIOS of my motherboard, all of those settings maybe had been reset because I was getting some weird vertical streaky lines that really shouldn't have been happening with Epic Mickey. And then I saw it also while I was playing the Blob, and so two different games there implied that there was potentially an undervoltage or something happening to my GPU, although turning up the fan probably isn't going to improve an undervoltage issue. The only thing that would have improved the undervoltage issue is to turn down the multiplier for my DDR RAM in my computer, not the video card RAM, just the CPU RAM, which I did that too. So just trying to underclock, overcool everything, and I think that has helped, although maybe just resetting my computer a couple times had helped, or maybe just streaming at a different time when the power grid isn't being strained might have helped too. We've got some new accessories here, so we got a lot of stuff to buy per se, and apparently there was a bug here. When the following monsters are placed on the left end of the main monster zone, the effect resolution confirmation is sometimes not shown. Interesting that you'd even be able to be programmed that way. Yeah. So we now have a login that is a Galactic Evolution pack ticket on top of this, on top of this. I might be hearing an echo specifically because I changed something, but I don't know what I would have changed. It's weird that I would only really hear it on the back button, but it's possible I am actually hearing the echo in multiple places and just not recognizing it. I had ChatGPT, let me change that to watch the live chat, rewrite the chat decorum. So yeah, it's funny, but ChatGPT might be just more capable at communicating with humans than I am. It did a really good job on the first prompt, which I have to pat myself on the back a little bit for prompting it correctly to rewrite what I wanted it to say. And so I guess now I'm just looking for feedback as far as the chat decorum, although inherently I may not listen to that feedback. Even in the last stream, the chat decorum the old chat decorum really was not working because one of the persons on the chat asked me why I was saying don't challenge me to a game. I explained it for like 2 minutes, which partially derailed the conversation, but I'm willing to explain myself there instead of just being 100% totalitarian and saying because I said so. Wish there was a way to get a bigger picture on this, but no. There. Interesting, this is more anime than I would really expect from Yu-Gi-Oh! But it is probably the direction that a lot of animators in Japan who would be working to make Yu-Gi-Oh! Art would just be comfortable drawing. It's not that old school style that we tend to see with Yu-Gi-Oh! Otherwise, where it's dragons or robots, things from a previous generation, or mechs. But yeah, last stream I explained as best as I could why I don't want people to challenge me and why it just never goes well and why people don't seem to want to take no for an answer. And even as I'm explaining it, that person is started to just argue back and try and make a case that he or she should have been the one exception to the I don't play against other people rules on Yu-Gi-Oh! So don't challenge me, don't ask me. And went on and just became more aggressive and more demanding until I finally just ignored that person in the chat. And had I been more ambitious, I would have even muted or banned the person. Yeah, so yeah, the rules, suffice it to say, just weren't working, and I don't know if anything works, but I do really love how ChatGPT has changed the chat decorum rules. So let's just go over them here. This isn't the best way to show it, but just in case you're not looking in the chat, the chat decorum part I added, and I told ChatGPT to include the things I was interested in and focused on, just not challenging me to games, not insulting, not argumenting, not distracting me, not trolling or derailing conversations. And ChatGPT added let's communicate positively and constructively. I know that the rules have to be in 200 characters and less, so I told it to be within that. And I just really love how this took the jumble of do's and don'ts that I had and turned it into a normal human sentence to say be respectful and avoid initiating game challenges. Initiating's an odd word. Arguments, distraction, trolling, or derailing conversations. Let's communicate positively and constructively. I didn't even say that part. Like, it just figured that out itself. And yeah. So pretty much it always is the case that anybody that talks about ChatGPT makes out like it is the new thing. But yeah, it kind of is the new thing. It can be very helpful. Weirdly, as somebody who was trained in programming, I think I probably communicate better with a program to then have the program tell a human, communicate with the human. These are, let's just look at all the art on these new cards. These all feel slightly different. Well, that seems Yu-Gi-Oh-ish. That does too, that does too. That does too. I guess it kind of does. So yeah. I'm going to probably try and lean on ChatGPT and some other places Maybe I rewrite the description on my YouTube videos. Maybe I'll figure out some maybe better titles for videos. But also I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. I can get a lot more benefit programming a macro to do something more imaginative than just writing or rewriting titles and descriptions. So that very possibly is a better focus. There is definitely a decent argument to buy a 10-pack here. So let's just go ahead and buy a 10-pack and hope we get at least a super rare, which it looks like we will. But yeah, I'm still certainly open to feedback as far as how to phrase things, or if there's something substantive that should be added. I'm probably less open to the idea of removing a rule. Otherwise, over the past couple days, I'm still playing the Blob, and I've started to stop. I took off the mislabeling of the streams on Twitch as reruns when they really weren't reruns. But I also took the step to just close the chat on Twitch. So whatever people are saying in the chat, I'm not even seeing it. It really was obvious to me that because I'm trying to make pre-recorded footage, and that pre-recorded footage really is just getting early access for the time being, for the short term, on Twitch. Me seeing something posted on Twitch's chat is only going to give me that microsecond pause and again distract me, and there's just no positive outcome from that for the type of content I'm trying to actually create. I wonder if Yu-Gi-Oh's audio is too loud here. I feel like I may have messed with the audio as to the way I hear it, or I may have even messed with the audio as to the way Yu-Gi-Oh is hearing it. Because it really does feel like this is averaging at a negative 20 decibels when usually I'd have Yu-Gi-Oh at a lower audio. And see, that's always a big concern, is that could be an audio bug, or a imbalance in the audio, not really a bug, in a whole video series or a bunch of videos, and I would just not catch it ever. Or it's just too loud, or just too quiet. I did upload Epic Mickey 2, and there is a specific cartoon that's included in the very last episode, and I don't know what I was thinking to actually hit play on that cartoon. It immediately got Content ID claimed and blocked, so I had to edit it out. So now there's just going to be this abrupt cut. I looked at it, it's not terrible. There is a ton of other copyright claims on Epic Mickey just throughout the entire series, but they're just like monetization copyright claims. They're not anything to really concern myself with. If I was in the YouTube Partner Program, I would potentially lose out on some revenue for covering that game, which is fine, whatever. Don't really care about that too much as long as the video footage can be seen and isn't blocked. So this is the new one, and then we've got some other new ones, although we really don't have enough gems to be opening a lot of things. It might be logical to wait until 31 days, then do one pack free pull, and work with that. And then this is updated to include, I think just this card was updated. It's just a different visual. Now, honestly, I don't know if this isn't just them trying to get rid of the original IP Masquerena, although if you were trying to censor the card, I don't know why you would come out with a different art style. It doesn't really feel like that's what they're doing. And then this one's new too, relatively new. Yeah, the Blob as a game is not interesting enough to really say anything. It's doing a really terrible job though of just explaining what you're supposed to do and how you're supposed to do. About, I would say, somewhere around a third of all the challenges in the Blob are around painting certain buildings certain colors, and it did not explain that it wasn't just like a percentage where you were supposed to have half of the painting, half of the buildings red and half of the buildings blue when the character tells you to paint the buildings red and blue. No, there's actually a glimmer that shows up around the buildings, and the glimmer shimmers up the vertical height of the buildings at a specific color, but visually that's very easy for me to overlook. So about halfway through the game I realized, oh, that's what I'm supposed to do. I'm not supposed to just brute force it and try and figure it out under a time limit. The main problem with the Blob is that the game has this very ridiculous time limit for no reason, and you can just lose a life and get another 3 or 4 minutes anyway, so the time limit isn't even that useful. On top of that, the time limit only gets more ridiculous as the levels get longer and longer. Last level, I painted 100% of all the objects in the level, figuring out that the compass feature in the game actually points you to things that aren't painted after you've done every other challenge. So, yeah. That there is a whole extra element there. Can I open anything after this free pool, I wonder? This might be a case where they absolutely wanted you to get an ultra rare card. That's a pretty great pull there. And that definitely unlocked several new things. So at the moment though, it's not really worth it to open any more of these packs if I'm going to continuously get more free pulls. But we need to wait until we get all the free pulls and then look at these cards. This is an interesting art style here for this zone card. But yeah, it seems like the Blob has some things that would really try and push you to spend a lot of effort on it. A lot of white cards here. But the main core gameplay loop of the Blob is not actually fun enough to really make me want to engage and go back and do all the levels and try and get all the challenges and awards. It doesn't really feel like it rewards you enough for doing the challenges in the first place. And yeah, I just don't think it's worth trying to grind for the achievements alone. And there's a whole party play, couch co-op 4-player feature that's supposed to be a big part of it, but without a second controller I can't even go into that mode. This one is a good candidate to not open any more packs, or maybe open maybe just another 10 packs as far as this goes. And we really just don't have enough currency to care to even look. Yeah, again, we already have a decent amount of cards for that one. I'm just looking, I guess, to see if there might be a new secret pack that I would have nothing, just no copies of at all. So yeah, I've just been streaming on Twitch. I am seeing slow progress, I guess, around getting closer to the path to affiliate. Let's see if there's newly added cards here. Doesn't really seem like it is the case. There is a decent amount of cards I don't seem to have, so there is an argument for this deck. Did we get everything else that was in the shop? It looks like we did. Yeah, so 7 days from now, logging in, or 7 more logins from now, which is probably not going to be 7 days. I should engage with that expansion and maybe open another 10 packs. Yeah. So there is definitely a question as far as if I cross that line to being a path to affiliate, which maybe I really won't anytime soon on Twitch, and maybe Twitch will always be this carrot being dangled in front of my face as far as what I should focus on. But even if I do get to the path to affiliate so I can upload videos and scheduled videos, it is definitely a big question as far as what the next step would be, as far as yeah, this isn't right. Let's fix this. -15. See if that does anything for me at all. Well, let me just see if this mute does anything for me at all. No, it doesn't. Okay. Well, that definitely turned it down in the amount. You know what? But I can't hear that, so that's not what's changing it for me. It's not changing it enough for me. Let's see what -10 sounds like. Yeah, I think -10 looks good, but I think what I probably have happening here is some double audio coming through. Let's see. See if I can fix this without screwing something else up. Yeah. I changed the audio input. That's the problem. Audio input should be that, so after this game I'll exit out and see if I can fix that. I was fiddling with the audio and changed the default audio input on Windows, which, yeah. The only other thing I've really been doing, I'm still trying to watch Ghost Whisperer, which that TV series just doesn't really feel that great. I'm getting perhaps into more of a standard habit of watching and catching up on other things. Like the Archer series, new episodes are coming out on a weekly basis. The Bleach episodes are coming out on a weekly basis, and so I've caught up on those two series, and so I probably need to find something different than Ghost Whisperer that's older that I could marathon. Let's see. I just got a quick victory there. Probably didn't deserve that victory. Let's see how this will work now. There might be an easier way to move a game over to a different audio device than just exiting it out and re-entering it, but let's see. Let's see. Notifications. I'm not sure if that did anything one way or the other. See, when I click this, yeah. There's something that should be muted, I think. Here. I'm not sure what it is. Volume mixer. Nope, it changed back. That whole muting thing. I'm totally muting Master Duel right now. And yet, both the game and me can hear it. Totally muting it there. And totally muting it there. Also doesn't seem to do anything. Although, muting those two probably don't matter too much. And see, muting it there does change it. Muting that doesn't change anything. So it didn't just move over. So maybe I'll try that again. I'm running out of time here. It really is a mess. But it is also just a little too expensive to buy a Rodecaster Pro at the moment, which I'm not sure that moving things outside of Windows 10 settings really is even going to be achievable to get the audio to work in a more logical way with less middleman settings. There really is like 4 different ways to have settings in Windows 10, and it probably only gets worse in Windows 11. Let's see. Go ahead and do this, I guess. Running out of time. I'm generally getting really tired of games putting timers on me. I can't really blame Yu-Gi-Oh for having a timer. It only really would work with timers, but I'm tired of getting that extra stress. The blob is a weird example of one that really shouldn't have any extra timer on it. Let's see if I can maybe do something here. Okay, Master Duel always should be voice meter input and voice meter output. The output here should be voice meter input and voice meter output. Now, there we go. So the newer Windows 10 way of setting up the sounds, I think, has fixed that. Hopefully. Let's go ahead and activate this effect as I'm running out of time. And that makes things considerably quieter. It was just blaring in my ears, and again, probably not something that was really that big of a problem for people watching on the stream. I should check the audio after this live stream just to see how loud it was for you, or what me fiddling with it has changed it to now. But yeah, audio problems plaguing me, really coming out of nowhere too. This card just can't be destroyed. And now you're gonna ask me to play that card? Ridiculous. Alright, that feels much better audio-wise, much more laid back, less blaring in my ears. Maybe I could see turning the audio back up another 5 dBs, or we can just keep it where it is. Let's see. Do I have anything else to really talk about? Yeah, I'm still playing Destiny Child. The 21st, so is when it's dead forever, pretty much. So yeah. I'm trying to catch up as much as possible and finish as much as possible, and we'll see how well that really happens and what the memorial version of that game really is even going to be, because I wouldn't be surprised if the memorial version of the game is actually fairly lackluster of what the overall amount of content it is. I'm still playing the adult game Tinka Fuma, which I think is either 1 year old or 3 years old, and either way you spin on it, it doesn't feel like there's quite enough content there. And I have to admit too, the thing I liked about Destiny Child is that it really wasn't ever an adult game. It's a mature game with lewd imagery, but it wasn't just showing like bedroom scenes ever or nudity. That it was doing maybe a couple nip slips in the art of a couple of characters, but it definitely wasn't just full-on exposed breasts or anything further than that. Whereas Tinka Fuma as an adult game is totally focused on that, and the story does not go anywhere else or say anything else or do anything else other than focusing in on bedroom scenes. So you're missing out, potentially, compared to Destiny Child, of the actual characterization and dialogue and narrative, of which there's quite a bit in Destiny Child, a lot of which I haven't read, and so I hope that's in the memorial section. I've unlocked all the story for each individual character, with each individual character having a backstory and an interaction of some sort. Maybe not a backstory so every time, but yeah, I do want to be able to just go through the library in the memorial version and read all the stories of each of the characters. A lot of the stories are just like funny comedic sequences with decent writing. I didn't love the main narrative of what I assume you'd call the third season of the game, when it took a drastic shift. But I still would like to see the entire main story wrapped up. I don't care if they just have to write a very generic ending for it. Because I kind of don't 100% know where they even were going, and I'm sure they didn't really know where they were going, because gacha games are designed to just be stretched out forever. But you would assume that the main character, one of the two depictions of the main character in Destiny Child, wins the Archfield, what is it called? Archfiend contest, I think is it. That is the main reason why all the characters are fighting. It becomes the new devil of Hell, the new leader of Hell, since he is a demon, not much of a demon, and not very evil as a demon. I could even see it going a direction where the Archfiend contest at one point wraps up and angels actually start to get involved, and you might even become the straight up god of that world. But yeah, I'd like to see something like that happen. Or, you know, they could also just give him a happy ending where he recovers his lost characters and lives happily ever after. If anything, I feel like this is too quiet now. Alright. Was I gonna do something here? But yeah, it's a pale comparison to play Tinka Fuma, and inherently, I think I would choose to jump off of an adult game into a different option fairly quickly if the game was going to give me, if some other new game came out. There you go. Let's go back to -5 and just leave everything the way it was. There. I uploaded all the YouTube shorts with the new audio, and unsurprisingly there's no problem with the audio files since they were in the YouTube library in the first place. Although it is worth mentioning that's not 100% guaranteed success in the long run or on any other service. YouTube has come out and made an arbitrary change as far as whether you can select mid-roll ads or different types of ads to show up on new videos being uploaded. So across YouTube you're going to probably see more ads, but it is going to try to use automation to make the ads less annoying. We shall see how well their automation really works there. Inherently, YouTube is just trying to make YouTube more annoying so that you buy YouTube Premium, and they're trying to make it more difficult to use ad blocker. You know, the modded ad blocker app I have with Sponsor Block enabled really changes things in a different way, and I think I've said this before, but it is just so shocking how much of a YouTube video has a sponsor baked in ad in the middle, and my eyes just glazed over on it, and I didn't even think about the fact that, yeah, this person is either wasting my time because they're promoting another YouTube channel, or they're showing an intro, or they're showing a sponsor, and I could just save more time and be more efficient by skipping all of that and having that automatically be skipped. As far as other games I'm playing on my cell phone, it's still Lower Decks, although increasingly I'm gonna tap out and max out on that. I did uninstall Marvel Snap, so that's gone. Let's see, am I doing really anything else? Nope. If anything, it has just been a lot of streaming, a lot of trying to make content. I'm dropping the ball on building the server rack I need to build. I'm dropping the ball on doing Lego, which I need to do some of the sets. I have too many sets and haven't really done anything in months. But those are kind of good things to potentially drop the ball on. Although, inherently, I should probably build a server rack, then fix my servers and rebuild the setup on them, so that if I do get into the Twitch's affiliate program, I would be able to create some kind of macro that would download old videos from YouTube, upload them as reruns effectively from many years ago. Like, I could probably go, it's probably been 10 years at this point, 10 years back, and just start uploading, like, The Binding of Isaac episode 1 would have been the first video I ever put on YouTube. And then just slowly download those videos to the server, keep them on the server, then upload them to Twitch without making that a super long and difficult process. Otherwise, the best case scenario is going to be that I start at like 2024, and all footage before 2024 is potentially going to be lost. It is possible, though, on Twitch that a lot of my old videos are already there. Not everything, by far, but I wouldn't be surprised if I managed to get the first couple of years on it. We can always live in the hope that YouTube would not totally overload videos with ads, but it probably is. Inherently, YouTube Premium is the only other option for small content creators, and big content creators can get enough Patreons to justify not running ads on their videos at all. But it does seem like the algorithm is probably going to try and feed you a lot more mid-roll ads and a lot more unskippable ads. And I don't know what, as a viewer of YouTube videos, we can really do other than threaten to boycott YouTube, which is probably not much of a threat. We should probably start going to the news. It's not like there's a ton of news this week. I think we are all probably set up for a bigger week next week, with Tokyo Game Show potentially happening next week and Labor Day just not being a factor. The makers of Miss Cyan showing off some pictures of somebody recreating Mist Island in Lego. Here's the clock tower puzzle. Here's the entirety of Mist Island. Mist Island, I suppose, probably translates fairly well to a Lego-ified version. Not as well as, say, Minecraft, but close enough. In that there's fairly simplistic elements to Mist Island visually. It's not overly detailed, overly complicated. And increasingly, I do want to activate spell cards, just in case I have a daily quest around that. Feels like either a lot of accounts are smurfing here, or people are just recognizing that my deck is strong enough that I really should be at a higher spot. So here's a more close-up view of it. Now, I wouldn't say Lego is amazingly interesting looking for Mist Island. There's a lot of repetition, and this is the problem certainly with a lot of fan-made builds, is that you're using just a ridiculous amount of bricks, and this is giants. This is probably somewhere around 4 feet this way, 6 to 8 feet this way. Looks like you might be like you might be even 5 feet tall. And there's tricks certainly to use less bricks on the parts you don't see, but this is well above, sorry, not showing it. This is well above the piece count and the details that somebody at LEGO would actually allow. And yeah, these kinds of builds either have to be sold for a decent amount of money, or they have to be broken apart by the adult fans of Legos to build the next build. And it's not, and you're not getting a ton of detail because there's not a ton of detail in like the roof that you never see in Myst, or the original Myst. You would definitely see, if LEGO was going to try to do this, they would probably try to make it microfig scale instead of minifig scale. This is close enough to minifig scale, which that just doesn't work. Or they would try to sell multiple sections of Myst Island in a whole series of sets, $200 each. So like $200 for this part, $200 for this part, $200 for this part. You would probably break it up to like this piece, this piece, this piece, this piece, this ship, the mechanical gear, the tower section, the star observation dome here that you can barely even see. That'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Gotta play quickly. Yeah, 9 different sets, probably targeting $200 to actually buy it. It's just way too expensive. If LEGO was going to license Myst, which I don't know why they really would, it's not a big enough property for them. They'd probably just make a Myst book, which would just be a reskin of some of their other books that they've already made out of LEGO. Or they try to have like painting equivalents, which that would potentially work too. Flatten the image down to a 2D image. But even at that, Myst Island as it is, while iconic, doesn't have a great angle to be flattened down in 2D. It just wasn't designed to be seen that way. But this certainly does highlight that there is still a large amount of fandom around Myst. Decades later. Let's see. We have a GameDeveloper.com article here saying Quantic Dream CEO says the new publishing label wants games, not franchises. Guillermo de, I can't pronounce his name, said Spotlight was established to help devs who wanted something fresh to say. In my turn there before I run out of time. Which isn't a terrible idea, certainly. I don't recognize this Spotlight company. I must have forgotten completely about this announcement. And Quantic Dream CEO, I'm not sure is really... Quantic Dream, I'm not sure they're really in the best position to be a publisher. But yeah, I think less and less focus on franchises should happen going forward, because we're just increasingly seeing even the trilogies not really working. God of War having 2 games in its reboot has shown the way forward. And even something like Baldur's Gate 3 is probably going to get a Baldur's Gate 4 from Larian, and then they probably will abandon it to a different developer for Baldur's Gate 5 or 6. But yeah, I think individual games, particularly in the presence of such a drought of games that we've had in the past couple of years, makes more sense. Independent games, not meaning indie developed games, but I guess maybe bespoke games might be the better way. Non-franchise games. Let's use that phrase. I think I use the phrase bespoke a little too often and maybe don't understand exactly what bespoke means. Here we have another GameDeveloper.com article. The Only Up developer has removed the game for Steam for, quote, peace of mind. The developer plans to return to games eventually. So, I suspect peace of mind might be an excuse there. I wouldn't be surprised if all of the I wouldn't be surprised if there's some not properly licensed art assets even in Only Up. We saw, certainly in other ripoffs of Only Up, a lot of asset flipped garbage being used, and I wouldn't be surprised if the truth of the matter is that Only Up also did that and just never thought it might get caught, or wasn't thinking things through at all. Alright, well, I'm just going to end the turn there. Let's see. We can see here it's labeled as not available. All the images have been taken down. Everything has been changed. The reviews stay. So this does show an interesting fact around Steam, in that while you can change the title to not available, you seemingly can't change this icon, or you didn't. You can delete all this, but you can't delete reviews. No longer available on the Steam store. Meanwhile, you could play Grow Up and Grow Home and play probably a better version of what Only Up was anyways. Clearly people had some love for the game, though, and it isn't really fair to take the game down just because you're having a mental breakdown by all your success. I'm glad that Notch from Minecraft didn't do something like that, because that would have been really unfair. After releasing the game's final update, the developer explained Only Up's kept him under a lot of stress all these months, and now I want to put the game behind me. That's what I decided for myself. What I need now is peace of mind and healing. End quote. Yeah, this is a lie. It's something to do with him not being licensed, or by something to do with him getting income that then he would have to declare in whatever country this developer is in. I kind of feel like that is probably the reason why Comic Rack, a comic library organizing software, disappeared about 10 years ago. It was by far the best comic book library organizer, although for the most part you would have had to scan in your own comic books or downloaded comic books to really utilize it. And there's a few people that give you PDFs of comic books, but a lot of DC and Marvel have it all DRM'd in its own setup. So yeah, I feel like the Comic Rack creator potentially was having too much success, or although he did stick with it a lot longer than this developer did. It would be in line with like the creator of Tetris, where a Russian or USSR citizen made Tetris and then the KGB basically stole it from him. And I bet there are citizens of some countries that are just told, take down that game. We don't want that game to exist. Because, yeah, you don't legitimately gain any peace of mind by having a game taken down. You're just depriving society. And it is an interesting argument there to say maybe all art once released should just be unremovable. I question whether the copyright concept of having the exclusive right to make copies of your art should extend to a non-copyright where you have the right to not make copies. And copyright really has never covered the idea of abandonware, but from a theoretical perspective, only up is abandonware now, so the only way it seems like you can get it is to pirate it. So should you feel bad if you pirate it? Like when the actual creator of the game has taken it down. It's also here, as noted by PC Games In, only up was previously delisted earlier in the summer due to claims of copyright violations in regards to the in-game assets. Which, yes, that is also what I suspect is going on here. There were allegations of it quietly advertising NFTs also. So you could kind of take your pick as to why it's been taken down. And then probably should just give up here on this game. Should probably just let him win. Indie Solo Dev went on to say that they'll continue to work on games with a sophomore outing simply dubbed Kith. Which I don't know what sophomore outing is supposed to mean there. Which they've called a new experience and a new concept with realism, completely different genre and setting, and emphasis on cinematography. Rather than doing it solo, they plan to have it made with a small team. So, in part, it seems like this indie solo dev person, which seems to be a solo person, is claiming to be in school still learning the program. which is somewhat believable. This is perhaps a great example of where Steam Direct shouldn't exist. Maybe there should be just a little bit more of a barrier to entry to become your own business. It wouldn't be the craziest things ever to say, show us a tax ID, show us an LLC before you can post a game on Steam. You need to be incorporated in some way and not just a sole proprietorship as a business. That's weird that Valve would say that, but it certainly would add a business level to it too. If they just ask, do you know what a sole proprietorship? Do you know what an LLC is? Things like that. That probably would be helpful. Let's see, could I get in the next 17 seconds enough progress to just end the turn and get this guy to surrender? Is this guy running out of time? Why would he be? It doesn't make for a better marketplace at all for video games, though, to have the only up game that people were really liking taken down and leaving a vacuum to now be filled with even worse asset flippers. It's still not really a good idea for like Microsoft or EA or somebody to quickly whip out a new clone. The next bit of news, RuneScape's developer Jagex may get sold off again. Jagex and RuneScape may change ownerships for the 6th time in a full decade. Which, yeah, that sounds like a nightmare. And I can't really see a reason that any legitimate company that's running its business correctly and that's having any level of success would be sold off that many times. Even a moderate failure of a video game company shouldn't be sold off that many times. It's fairly ridiculous. Oh, I wanted to highlight Epic Games on Twitter here. They're trying to promote some of their timeless classics in the Epic Games Store library. In here it's showing off Battle Chess, which that is more than what Valve would ever really do. Battle Chess is also on Steam, but it might also highlight that they don't have that many games to highlight, in that they're talking about a very, very old PC DOS game. And as fun as Battle Chess may have been back in the day, it really doesn't have any relevancy to me. It should. There should have been at least 2 remakes of Battle Chess over the years, but nobody's really bothered to do it. Now would be the best time ever. Like, you make a ray tracing animated Battle Chess, that would be kind of amazing. It's still going to be around chess though, and so I don't know how many people really want to play chess, but you should try something there. And I imagine the phrase Battle Chess is probably not even copyrightable or copyrighted anymore, so you'd have to do some research on that. But you could always call it combat chess or animated chess or something like that. Let's see, GameDeveloper.com says there's a report that YouTube's instant play games have reached public testing. YouTube and video games are already tight-knit, and the arrival of playables may only deepen their relationship. I don't know how much YouTube thinks video games and YouTube are tight-knit. They certainly don't really care about gamers that much, other than there's actual competition with Twitch against YouTube, and then in other aspects there's really not that much competition. But yeah, I do feel like YouTube is going to try at some point to have a way in which you're clicking on videos that in the same way are advertised to you in the subscription or the suggestions feed, and those videos or thumbnails are going to lead to an interactive game instead of YouTube content creator, which is going to be really unfair, because then all of a sudden video game streamers are going to get less attention and less suggestions and less impressions, and mainstream AAA game developers are just going to advertise their video games directly to people. Although that probably won't work that well. A lot of kids these days would rather watch somebody else play a game, particularly if they're going to the YouTube app, than play a game themselves. So I imagine it probably will work about as well as the Netflix app and all of that, like Netflix gaming games through the Netflix app. But the consideration changes quite a bit if all of a sudden the YouTube TV app is giving you video games. Or if you're a kid and your parents say you can watch YouTube but you can't play video games. I don't know why a parent would say YouTube is better than video games, but then you could have kids telling their parents, this is YouTube, it's just interactive YouTube. Or, yeah. But yeah, if you have a Google TV and then the YouTube app is your way to play more games or any games on the Google TV, that'll be an in for some people. Send to the graveyard, I guess this. Yeah, nothing's really gonna save me here, but we can try. We can pretend to play. YouTube Creators has a video here for titles and thumbnails that I was gonna check out later. Just try and learn. Here you have one. Are you starting a new video, a new school year, both lol? Like, so you can show that they are kind of actively targeting younger people. Interestingly, YouTube Creators here not really covering the changes to the monetization and the ad choices so far. See, GameDeveloper.com also has an article. Atari has acquired a historian website called Atari Age. Nothing's really changed for Atari Age other than the fact that it's now owned by its namesake. And they say that now. Although, I feel like the organization that bought Atari may have changed over, because there may have just been a new company that has bought Atari, or there's just a real decision here by Atari to actually care about video games. like because they've acquired Night Dive Studios and Atari Age, so maybe they are just on an acquisition spree while things are cheap to sell off Atari as a company again, but they are at least making some small steps to look like an actual company that isn't just trying to have hotels themed around Atari. Well, I guess I could destroy 2 more cards, but I won't bother with that. Let's see if I could possibly search and do a little research instead of just speculate. Atari Wikipedia. Let's see. As of 2023, the current Atari's focus is video games, consumer hardware licensing, and blockchain. Let's see. Infograms. Is that Infograms or Infogames? I guess it's Infograms. Bought Hasbro Interactive in 2001 and renamed it to Infogrames Interactive, which imminently published Atari-based games. In 2003, it renamed the division Atari Interactive. Another IESA division, Infogrames, changed its name to Atari Inc. That same year, licensing the Atari name and logo to its fellow subsidiary. In 2008, IESA completed its acquisition of Atari's outstanding stock, making it wholly owned subsidiary. IESA was renamed itself Atari SA. In 2000 name, it sought bankruptcy protection under French law in 2013. So, yeah. This is still the same shareholders company, basically, as I understood it. Doing a lot of political wrangling, or corporate wrangling, I guess not political, to rename itself, license itself over to a different company, shift paperwork all over the place to go bankrupt in 2013. Before that, it was Hasbro Interactive had acquired Atari from JTS, and the original Atari was sold off to Jack Trammell's Trammell Technology Limited, which was renamed Atari. So there's been like 5 different Ataris. And yeah, unless you had an Atari, its relevance is fairly low. There's a lot of consoles that are historically somewhat relevant, but not a lot of games. Let's see. What I'd like to see here was a list of games for Atari consoles, and I think that probably would require me to actually click on, there we go, Atari games. These are games probably made directly by Atari. Marble Madness, Paperboy, these are things that would have been ported to more relevant consoles, particularly the NES. The Blob is a little bit like Marble Madness in that it is a round thing that's rough to control, difficult to control. Tubin, Cyberball, Clax. These are very, very old games that have historical value, although a lot of them not really worth playing. And then several more games that they published, but not really even that long of a list of directly made from Atari games. See if there's anything here. 3 more days left on this Duel Pass, so I need to actually save my gems to buy a new dual pass, although that probably is only going to be about a 900 gems. Let's see. Starfield appears to have the biggest Xbox Game Studios launch day ever. This is Video Games Chronicle. The game has been played over 6 million players in its first 24 hours. I saw a YouTuber making a complaint, and it had a lot of spoilers in it after the first couple of minutes, so he said don't watch if you don't want to spoil yourself on the game. But his complaint is that the lines of dialogue options in Starfield don't really matter. Like, he showed an example where he picked 3 different dialogue options in the same questline conversation with a character, and he put each audio and each video side by side, and after about 2 sentences it syncs back up and the character is saying the exact same thing. So he's basically got 1 or 2 sentences of response based on what you directly said, and then it doesn't matter what your dialogue choice is at all, and you're just back on the rails to have the experience that Bethesda wanted you to have. Which that's not how I think Fallout has worked in the past. It's not how I feel like Elder Scrolls games have worked in the past. So if the dialogue choices aren't very RPG-ish, what is? Like, he made a similar iteration that the skills kind of don't matter in Skyrim either. So, yeah. It may not matter. RPG elements may be much better when they are just dumbed down and the facade of actual choice than they are when there's a real choice. You have 2 distinct types of games potentially in that Baldur's Gate 3, I imagine, has real RPG elements that really matter as far as the dialogue choices, and then you have Starfield that just has facade of choice, and both games may be perfectly acceptable for players. How many people really think even now that they would play multiple runs of Starfield? I wouldn't be surprised if very few people have even given that any thought, but even if they were going to play multiple runs, it probably would be over the course of a long enough time that you wouldn't even remember what your choices were the first time around. Skyrim kind of has that same problem too, in that you can choose to be on one faction or the other faction in Skyrim. Otherwise, most of the storyline quests go pretty much the same way, maybe with a little bit more branching than what Starfield might have. And like, your dialogue choices tend not to really matter too much in Skyrim. But yeah, if anything, I kind of lean to saying I don't like the idea of the fact that Skyrim has 2 different factions, and you can join this faction on the left side of the map or the faction on the right side of the map, but if you really want to experience a full game, you have to actually play the game twice and choose the other faction, and even then there's so much variety, you're still not really experiencing every option. And then, like, when I played Fallout 3, there's really no way I'd ever decide to blow up Megaton City as an option at the very beginning of Fallout 3. So even though I played that game to the credits twice, I still made the same choices. And that is very often the case when I'm role-playing, is that I would make very similar, if not the exact same choices through multiple playthroughs. But it is an interesting criticism from a small YouTuber who's probably trying to get clickbait views. But yeah, I wonder if it's something other people might feel. Although it does inherently assume that there's a lot of people who want that pure RPG type of gameplay, and maybe that doesn't actually exist. ScumBM has a iOS port in public testing now. I feel like, though, they tried to get it on the Apple Store, in the App Store, and they were rejected. But maybe there's a maybe a way to get around the App Store, or maybe they're anticipating that the Apple App Store is no longer going to be allowed to reject things, which is somewhat possible through legal rulings. But yeah, seems like you have to use Apple's Test Flight app to test it. Yeah, and I just question whether there's real value in that. I don't know how many people who want the simplistic life of using an iPhone and iOS also want to jump through the hoops of running emulators to play old point and click adventure games, or just old games in general nowadays with ScumVM on such a small screen. Tablet would make some sense, but even then, like, I don't know how many people care. But maybe a lot of people do care. Tested.com, or formerly known as Tested.com, then changed its name to Adam and Jamie's Tested.com, and then dropped Jamie for just Adam Savage's Tested.com. Did basically a sponsored model build for Starfield. And there's an hour-long video showing them making models. This is, I think, what Adam Savage actually did when he worked at LucasArts. I'm not sure he actually worked on any of the Star Wars movies. But yeah, a once big TV celebrity is now owning a small 6 million subscriber website through a publisher company. So I don't know if he really actually even owns it. Whereas Tested.com at one point was a fairly big gadget podcast and website, trying to be something like CNET and review a bunch of games. Not games, but a bunch of gadgets. It is much more gadget based. They did talk about video games every now and then. But yeah, it has really just completely changed just to be all about Adam Savage, who doesn't make enough content really, and it isn't that interesting. And each of these characters, I couldn't even tell you who these people are. These are probably just assistants or helpers, maybe from Bethesda. But I guess Adam Savage is also safe as a model builder, where you'd have to struggle to think of another model builder to potentially highlight. Let's not actually just watch somebody else's YouTube videos, come to think of it. Phil Spencer has addressed potential Elder Scrolls 6 exclusivity. We look at it on a case-by-case basis with the games that we build. Seems like Phil Spencer is just increasingly boiling the crabs here, because I'm fairly certain he said it doesn't make financial sense for Elder Scrolls 6 to be an exclusive earlier in the Activision Blizzard merger claims. So I don't know why he's really changing his response while they're still trying to get the Activision Blizzard merger through. Like, he should reveal his evil side after he gets the merger through, not now. Or evil / capitalistic side. Elder Scrolls 6, I mean, there's a decent possibility it would be an exclusive for the 6-month launch window. Exclusive meaning Xbox Series X and S and PC, and probably still on Steam, just leaving out PlayStation and Nintendo. But even at that, Nintendo's next console may actually handle Elder Scrolls 6, so may just leave out the PlayStation. I don't know if Elder Scrolls 6 would be a system seller, though, so I'm not sure what the value of the exclusivity would be. I could see it maybe being early access if you have Game Pass Ultimate, or paying even extra for early access, but it is still somewhat of a niche style of games. It's not a Call of Duty type game. It's not something that's going to get the gamer bros or new players playing. And I don't think it's something that's going to get PC players, who are most of the Skyrim players, if I was to guess, playing on consoles. So, yeah. It also seems fairly ridiculous to even argue about Elder Scrolls 6 when it's probably 4 to 8 years away. This is funny, and you don't see this very often. Oddworld put out this crossover joke of Oddworld and Bayonetta, so they put the Oddworld face over Bayonetta as a character. Yeah, you just don't have different companies of different games doing this. I believe this was retweeted probably by Platinum Games, so they were in on the joke. And I would assume anytime you see these in on the joke things, it is really negotiated and agreed upon before. But there really is nothing right now to say about either Oddworld or Bayonetta. There aren't new games around it, so they're just being silly, basically. See, I guess maybe the Platinum Games and Sega are the close allies. Moving on, Mortal Kombat 1's official Jean-Claude Van Damme trailer has been released, which, yeah, they are definitely doing the celebrity gimmick. I would say if this is supposed to look like Jean-Claude Van Damme, this is not anything what I think he looks like now. Maybe this is him years and years ago. And I'm not sure that Jean-Claude Van Damme even makes a lot of sense on in Mortal Kombat, because he's not a big enough celebrity, and he's not really a big enough Mortal Kombat guy. I mean, karate guy. Like, he probably does know how to do a decent amount of karate, but do you really want real karate people showing up in Mortal Kombat? Does that matter to you? TubeBuddy puts out this thing, 0 subscribers, 0 views, 0 likes, 0 comments. That's where every single successful creator started. You're not failing, you're just beginning. This is some BS, because it's also where every failure started and stayed, or it's started at least. So you're having a survivorship bias on that. And inherently, if you have 0 subscribers after a week, you've probably failed as a YouTuber, because you could at least subscribe yourself. If you have 0 views and 0 likes and 0 comments, I mean, you're not really supposed to subscribe to your own channel and view and watch your own stuff and like and comment on your own stuff, but like, you can comment on your own stuff at least. You can get that much done. You can get somebody to subscribe. So it really is a matter of time. If you're at 000 after about a week, you've failed. Don't worry about it. Continue to make content. Continue to learn, I would say. Don't just give up, but don't expect that you're going to be a breakout hit probably in the first 3 years at minimum of making content, which is an insane amount to work for free in anything. And the numbers towards success are just incredibly high. These are not the numbers you are really looking for. Even to get to the halfway point, you need like 500 subscribers. You need not particularly any amount of views unless you're trying to make YouTube Shorts. Then you need 5 million views on YouTube Shorts, I think is the amount. Likes and comments aren't counted. If you're not trying to get YouTube Short views to be a path to halfway being in the YouTube Partner Program, then you would need at least 2,000 watch hours in the last 90 days. Those are the real numbers that TubeBuddy doesn't want to actually focus on. For the most part, I haven't used TubeBuddy at all in over a year, and I just question if it as an assistant device is that useful anymore. That because I've made better macros for myself, but they've also put most of their helpful tools behind a purchase of some sort. Moving on back to video games. I probably should stop talking about YouTube as much as I do, but whatever. The return of a classic Nintendo series might be being teased for an upcoming Nintendo Direct, according to Video Games Chronicle. Nintendo has traditionally held direct presentations in September. It's been suggested that F-Zero news might be being teased on Twitter using Pyro. Yeah. This is a lot of speculation, frankly, with no evidence. Teases for announcements that might happen are not really news. Would Nintendo bring back an old series? Sure, if it made sense to them. Does it make a lot of sense to announce a series when they're about to announce a new console next year? Yeah, maybe that would make sense, particularly if the console is going to have maybe some augmented reality or VR element to it, which it actually might have something crazy like that in it. Although, if it does, we might see the return of something like the Virtual Boy, just a complete failure too. But yeah, it's really not worth your time to care about things before they get announced. There'll still be plenty of time until the game actually would be released, if it is released. Video Games Chronicle says Gargoyles Remastered, based on the 1995 Sega Genesis game, gets a release date. This is a modernized Disney cartoon tie-in. Will be released digitally and physically. I guess Disney Channel or Disney Plus has a new Gargoyles cartoon. Now, inherently, the problem with these old games, though, is that they can only play so well. And this really does just look like the old game in a square ratio. And I guess maybe this is remastered art in a widescreen. I did like the remake of or remaster of DuckTales, so that might work. The instant rewind really screams that they are running some kind of emulator on it to run the old game and the old game code, and then they are just changing the visuals over the old game code, which means the game is almost certainly going to play exactly the way it used to, which may be a good thing for fans of the original Gargoyles game. Disney really has done a pretty terrible job of having remasters of their old games. I kind of want to know which developer is working on this. Limited Run Game is publishing it or selling it, but is this Sega internally that is remastering it? Let's see. Yeah, Disney Games, Empty Clip Studios. Let's see, I just don't think that is the same company that made the DuckTales remaster, so I just don't know if I want to trust it, particularly since I just looked at the Disney Afternoon Collection, which tried to do a lot of the same thing without actually bothering to remaster the visuals, and it really just highlighted how unplayable these old games are. They're too difficult. They often are extremely short. You might be able to run through the entirety of Gargoyles in a couple of minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, if you can actually get through the difficulty of those types of games. So, yeah. I'll be interested to see what the reviews are or what the reception is around the Gargoyles remastered. But Disney definitely just needs to push forward and continue to license out their old games to be remastered and remade. They really should be remade. And since a lot of those games are so short, maybe they need to merge a few games together anyways, and have their own Kingdom Hearts type experience without the Square Enix element, or make a collection, or just remake them and make the games much bigger. Gargoyles as a TV show goes through a lot of narrative. You could certainly base a 60-hour game based on the narrative that happens in the Gargoyles TV show. Moving on, the Video Games Chronicle says that sources say Nintendo showed the Switch 2 demos at Gamescom. The company is understood to have held private tech demos ahead of an expected 2024 launch. They're calling it the Switch 2. I'm not sure if it really is going to be called the Switch 2, because I heavily suspect that it may not have detachable Joy-Cons and the ability to switch how you hold the controllers, which that was the idea of the name of the Switch, was that you could turn the controller 90 degrees when it was detached and turn it into a different kind of type of controller, more like an NES controller, although very small NES controller. There's also claims that they were showing off the Matrix Awakens Unreal Engine 5 tech demo on this new Nintendo console, and updated versions of Breath of the Wild at a higher frame rate and resolution, with I think some ray tracing even enabled using NVIDIA's DLSS Super Sam upscaling. Which, yeah, it maybe shows off an emphasis, if these rumors are true, that Nintendo is really going to try and push the graphics a lot more for this next generation. But even if they do push the next console graphics a lot more, it's still going to be behind the likely capabilities of the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5. It'll still feel like it's a generation behind doing its own thing. The ESA, that from GameDeveloper.com, this article is, promises that another E3 reinvention is going to happen. They have parted ways with ReedPop after the last E3 was cancelled. Definitely feels like either ReedPop was hired to be the fall guy for E3 being cancelled, or at least in part to take the blame of this most recent E3 being cancelled, or ReedPop really just did a great job of screwing over the ESA by not really caring about E3 and instead focusing on PAX, because notably in the same period in which ReedPop was in charge of E3, PAX still happened, and ReedPop is the PAX organizers. But it is possible that they just didn't work well together, and it's both of their faults. There's a whole article here, but yeah, ESA basically either has to raise its fees to have a game rated by the ESRB, which is a subsidiary of the ESA, or they have to have an E3 event happen so they can charge ridiculous amounts of money from presenters and game presenters. And I just don't know if the game presenters care that much. I think a lot of game presenters might be perfectly fine with the idea of the ESRB charging more to rate their games and then them just not bothering to get the games rated. I don't know if we really are at a point in the United States where if Microsoft said, hey, we're just going to self-review our games and give you a content warning based on our own system instead of using the ESRB, I don't think congressmen in the United States would actually do anything about that. Like, not to get too political, the Republicans are all about big business and freedom away from being regulated by the government, and the Democrats are all about business, big business, and the freedom of speech, in the sense that they don't want to regulate big business either. So yeah, there's not a lot of actual interest amongst the two dual ruling parties of the United States as far as actual regulation or anything like that around video games. Not unless they're just going to try and use video games as a scapegoat, but even at that, most politicians that use video games as a scapegoat are clearly know they're using it as a scapegoat, and they're not actually trying to stop games from being sold or being released. They want that scapegoat to still exist, so that they don't have to address more difficult issues such as mental health or gun control amongst the youth. Let's see. Speaking of the youth, Japan has a whole different definition of fair use and copyright, and a whole different set of laws. So there was a Japanese YouTuber who was arrested, I guess it was probably a few months ago, for putting out YouTube videos that were just fully spoiling Steins Gate, a visual novel. Now, in part, visual novels, even like Steins Gate, probably don't have that much variety or interaction to them. Not to a point where it's easy to see that something is fair use. That has, in part, certainly pushed me to think about not really covering visual novels, or very specifically picking which visual novels. That being said, I really wouldn't have a problem to cover one of the biggest visual novels out there, which would be Steins Gate. But Steins Gate, the original game, Steins Gate in the series, is many years old. But yeah, Japanese law, completely different, and apparently a criminal thing. It may have been that they actually recently made it a criminal offense. So they have given him a suspended jail sentence and fine for posting game footage, which means he's basically going to be on parole or probation for a long time, and if he isn't found to be in violation of the probation parole, then he won't have to go to jail and he won't have to pay the fine, which, yeah, that's very crazy for just posting video game footage. He was a 53-year-old person, so not really even a kid, found guilty of violating Japan's Copyright Act. When was the Copyright Act enabled, though? Because that may be an old law, it may be a new law. posted 3 videos on YouTube. Not a lot, but they could be very long videos between September 2019 and May 2022, including game footage from the 2011, so you're talking 22-year-old visual novel, Steins Gate, My Darling's Embrace, and edited footage from an anime movie. One of the arguments was that Steins Gate's video showed the game's ending. Since visual novels are far less interactive than action-focused game genres, it can be argued that watching a YouTube video of a visual novel is a similar experience to actually playing the game. As such, the argument made by the prosecution was that the publisher Spike Chunsoft could miss out on sales if some users chose to watch a playthrough of the game's story right through to the end instead of buying it. Which, if the laws went this way in the United States, then that would be very weird as a YouTuber to potentially have to play a game and then stop at the last act and just say that you can't cover the end of any game and the credits. It's argued that Yoshida's actions were a malicious act that tramples on the effort of the content creation by discouraging the purchase of the product. Inherently, this argument really stinks because it's like it's illegal to discourage Japanese citizens to purchase products. Like, capitalism is so unfettered and so important that it should be in some ways illegal to discourage people from buying things. That's a disgusting thought, in my opinion. The defense countered that Yoshida's actions were not particularly malicious and asked for a suspended sentence. I think he probably was, as is often the case in Japan, forced to admit guilt through the ridiculous legal system that they have, in which you just cannot win. You can't go away innocent. And even in the United States, that's very much the case. As the prosecutors will not stop prosecuting you until they get some kind of conviction of some sort that looks good on their records. But yeah, in Japan, I think they can kind of hold you forever without charging you, and they can just interview you forever and break you down. And Japanese people are trained from birth to give in to authority. Let's see. The judge agreed, and Yoshida was given a 2-year prison sentence, which was suspended for 5 years, meaning he doesn't have to be jailed if he doesn't offend again during the period. And he was also fined 1 million yen, $6,780, which is actually a very small amount of money for any kind of conviction. According to Asahi, this is the first time someone has ever been convicted of violating the Copyright Act for distributing video game footage, and it does make a dangerous precedent. Certainly. To the point where you may see Japanese YouTubers, of which I don't think there are too many anybody outside of Japan would recognize, just moving out of Japan or not making video game based content. But yeah, it is a bad precedent, particularly when you know the fact that the Japanese laws often can reach across the oceans into other countries like the United States via what are they called? Trade agreements between Japan and the United States. And so there is this weird in-run in which the United States president can unilaterally make a trade agreement to agree to follow and enforce the laws of another country, to the point where if the Japanese really wanted to do it, they could demand the extradition of a United States YouTuber for publishing Steins Gate. So immediately, knowing that that is at least a small possibility, there's a chilling effect here. but not that big of a chilling effect. I wouldn't be really concerned about it if I was going to cover Steins Gate. I still would probably do it. I would talk over it incessantly, and I would try my very best to make it very obvious that it's fair use. Inherently, probably, if you tried to cover Steins Gate, one test video would probably show that it would be content ID blocked on YouTube anyways, which that is the default way in which Japanese companies deal with a lot of this, is that they just block the video and audio. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle says that Mario's voice actor, or former voice actor we really should say, Charles Martinet, his new role will involve attending events and meeting fans, which he, I think, was already doing. Nintendo has published a new video addressing the voice actor's change to Mario Ambassador. Shigeru Miyamoto, I believe, shows up at some point here, but I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, you can even see here that this bluish gray background is not even the same lit room. Like, so yeah, Shigeru Miyamoto in Japan making this video, Charles Martinet in the United States making the video. Even at this, you can see Shigeru Miyamoto is taking up way more of the screen time than Charles Martinet is to address this one issue. Now, inherently, this is a real job, technically, if they're paying to have him attend events and meet fans, which they probably were, and they probably still are, but it still is a fairly significant layoff. Like, a significant change in his work title, a significant change in his work requirements. He's effectively been laid off in a very Japanese way, and they're just hoping to save face and not have to fire him or lay him off, which is really what they're doing. He definitely looks old, and I bet his voice is getting crackly. And Shigeru Miyamoto is also preparing to step down from being the face of Mario 2. There just needs to be a new generation of Mario people in charge of Mario. But yeah, clearly this is a very public story that Nintendo wish wasn't a public story. And almost certainly Nintendo would have liked Charles Martinet to just retire. Before the Mario movie had come out, and all of that argument against him not being the voice actor wouldn't have become such a big deal. And maybe Nintendo didn't see that coming. It's somewhat believable, but they probably should have. Moving on, GameDeveloper.com has a report that Nintendo is introducing developers to the Switch 2. This is basically the exact same story with just a different headline. We still we don't really have any real news to say about the next Nintendo console, which at this point, calling it the Switch 2 is not what I want to do, and I would recommend people not call it the Switch 2 until Nintendo actually admits that it is called the Switch 2. We have a Muzin Jackson on the chat saying, "It's a me, Mario." Let's see. Next GameDeveloper.com article we have, it says, Blumhouse Games has appointed a veteran journalist, Louise, is that how you pronounce that, with an E? Blaine, as the creative lead. Blaine will help identify and vet potential development partners. Which, okay. I guess that means Blumhouse Games is fairly early in its development cycle. I guess they're trying to make a Five Nights at Freddy's movie series or something like that. Let's see. Well, A Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem game has been announced for consoles and PC, which, yeah, yet another Ninja Turtles games. They're churning out Nintendo Ninja Turtles games probably a little too fast at this point. Let's see. Video Games Chronicle says after 25 years, Sega is going to bring back Daytona USA to consoles for the first time. Daytona USA 2 for consoles for the first time would be a better way to phrase that. Instead of 2 consoles, having 2 TWO and TO back to back is not a good way for an editor to write a headline. Apparently this is a Sega game, when I would have thought that Daytona USA was a Nintendo game. So, well, Cruising USA is a Nintendo game, and that's why I'm confusing it. Xbox says Starfield topped 1 million concurrent players on launch day, which that is a huge amount. There was a YouTube video I saw about a Japanese survey poll about how the younger generation of gamers in Japan are much more open to playing Western games, and they are just playing a lot more PC games. And I'm seeing more of that myself, as just far as how many Japanese only games are getting released on Steam. But yeah, the numbers that this poll really was going up to was 16% for what they were considering the old generation, to somewhere around 60% having interest in playing Western games. So yeah, Japan could be very much a bigger, newer market for video game developers. Of course, I saw another YouTube video saying that China by far was the biggest market for video games, and I mean, I don't know if I can really believe a lot of that, considering how many games are just pirated in China, and nobody outside of China is like profiting from those video games. Plus, I can't really believe a lot of the numbers that come out of China. Anyways, moving on, Video Games Chronicle says Larian is planning for Baldur's Gate 3 to have PC and console crossplay. The studio director says publishing says the feature is on the director of publishing says the feature is on the roadmap. I also heard that there was a bug in Baldur's Gate 3 where the characters had too high of an affinity level to start with, so there were characters that were just willing to bone down with you far too easily. They wanted to make the characters boneable, but not that easily. So they're working, or they have patched that bug. Then there's a GameDeveloper.com article saying that Baldur's Gate 3 shouldn't be a standard for video games, or that Baldur's Gate 3 is not trying to set a standard for video games. And whether they want to or not, though, they effectively are. Like, whenever you raise the bar, you raise the bar. It's just that easy. When you have Mike Tyson step into the ring, or Cassius Clay, later known as Muhammad Ali, I believe was his original name. Like, when you have Muhammad Ali step in the ring and drastically change what boxing is, the brutality of it and the strength of it, it just raises the bar. When you have the best biker set a new standard in what bicycling is, even if he was on steroids and doped up on drugs, which that basically is the standard for most sports. When you have the best swimmer in the Olympics setting a new standard and raising the bar. It just doesn't matter what you intend. You're changing the play field and you're setting a new standard. When one video game company sets the price for a video game at $70, they're setting a new standard on what you can get away with. When they introduce a $35 early access fee for video games, you're setting a new standard. Maybe it's not a standard that other people will follow, but you definitely are changing things. And maybe sometimes you shouldn't open Pandora's box, but corporations would never agree to that. They're always going to push things as far as they can get away with. And there really needs to be an argument as far as to what's wrong with setting a new standard with Baldur's Gate 3. What's wrong with working on making a really good game that is very content rich and takes a long time to play, and getting rid of low effort products. Like, I look at every single video game that comes out on Steam. I see a ton of incredibly short, beat it in 2 minutes, beat it in 5 minute games. I see a ton of garbage asset flip games. The bottom of the scale totally still exists, and if anything is going to raise the bottom of the scale, it is probably going to be a new standard for AAA games like Baldur's Gate 3, and better quality and better content. Once you have even the scummiest of scammers realizing that nobody is going to buy their game because there are so many good games on Steam otherwise, and that it isn't even worth the $100 fee to do Steam Direct, that's a good thing. Baldur's Gate 3 is not going to stop Halo Infinite from being made, like, as kind of a mediocre game that didn't get all the features it really should have had. Baldur's Gate 3 is not going to stop Overwatch 2 from being made as a game that didn't get all the features that it promised for. We're still going to have AAA games coming out and trying their best and often failing. But at the end of the day, a company with a publisher and that is making AAA games is still going to make AAA games. And inherently, I much would prefer to wrap this up, Baldur's Gate setting a standard, than Batman Arkham Knight setting a standard as a buggy garbage game. Cyberpunk 2077 on its day one launch being a buggy garbage game. Those are just two relatively recent garbage games. Or Skull and Bones being in development hell, Duke Nukem Forever being in development hell forever, Beyond Good and Evil 2 never really being in development in the first place. Those are all bad things that have happened. EA coming out with annualized garbage full of microtransactions. Like, we could just go down a extremely long list of other things that are pretty standard in video games that are worse than Baldur's Gate 3. Speaking of Skull and Bones, apparently Skull and Bones has lost its third creative director, reportedly still without a release date. Ubisoft Singapore is also facing an organized labor campaign, so potentially going to unionize. Let's see, when was Skull and Bones originally announced? I don't see a date. It was supposed to come out in 2018, and this Elizabeth Pellin of Ubisoft Singapore, let's see, worked on some other games. Splinter Cell Pandora tomorrow. And the Shooter 13. Which those aren't very recent games. And then there's allegations of workplace harassment and unfair treatment at the company. So, yeah. Sounds like a nightmare is happening at Ubisoft Singapore, which Ubisoft in general sounds like a pretty hostile work environment, either in the case of the management screwing up, which is probably the case, or in the case of the employees just being irate. At a certain level, you can't blame the tech department being irate with Ubisoft's main office in France for workplace harassment or anything like that in Ubisoft Singapore. Let's see, moving on. Mortal Kombat 1 also adds this character Natara, which I assume she's a totally new character. The Vampire of the Outworld returns. I guess she is a character. I just don't recognize her. And noticeably, she is going to be voiced by Megan Fox, which I know the name Megan Fox, but I can't really place what she's been in. She's kind of it's sad to say older actor, but she's been around a while. She's not one of the brand new ladies, and I don't know if this is really face scanning happening here. Is Megan Fox the lady that was in the Transformer movies with the hot pants and all of that? Yeah, I'm just so not into watching the mainstream movies that really wouldn't know. But they definitely are back to just stunt casting, and this was potentially some of the complaints about the previous Mortal Kombat 11 game. Although in that case they did horrible face scans of Sonya Blade and then had a pretty horrible voice acting performance from the person that they had stunt cast for Sonya Blade. I don't know. I mean, yes, it would cost more money, but I don't know why you wouldn't have a default voice actor also do the lines for a character and then stunt cast. Like, spend the extra money to have the default voice actor do the lines, then send the lines to Megan Fox and say, we want you to do these lines and you're going to be the DLC voice files or the special voice files. I seriously doubt that anybody is actually going to buy Mortal Kombat 1 because of Megan Fox being the voice actor of some vampire lady character that is not one of the original Mortal Kombat characters, and not even a character that I think is in the first 4 or 5 Mortal Kombat games. Like, I have no idea when she was introduced. It's a little off-putting to have vampires or anything that even looks slightly like a vampire in a Mortal Kombat game. But then you have all these other skins and things that they're promoting too. So the idea here, let me just look up what Megan Fox is known for and do a little research here. The idea of, she has her own website domain. Of Mortal Kombat 1 being back to basics really gets thrown out the window when you're doing stunt casting again. So, born in 1986, let's see, and she was Confessions of a Drama Queen, Hope and Faith. She was in Transformers and Revenge of the Fallen Transformers. She was in Jennifer's Body. April O'Neil in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and a sequel to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows. These are the older, newer ones. She's on New Girl. She's kind of a fashionista character. Has she done any TV work? Doesn't really feel like that's that many movies. Yeah. Here's a picture, by the way, of what April O'Neil originally looked like in the comic books, by the way. The artist was drawing his mixed race, half black, half white lady in black and white, and this is the first colorized version of it. So a lot of people thought she was supposed to be black, and she is black or white or half and half. And traditionally, if you're half and half, they call you black. Racists do, at least. There was a bunch of talk around that, certainly, when they eventually made a younger version of April O'Neil who was completely dark-skinned, and people were unhappy about that. So she's supposed to be like a sex symbol, but this interesting that highlights a whole issue too there, that I should just scroll down to the filmography. If she is just the sex symbol for movies, coming into a Mortal Kombat game and then not really playing a character that's any really sexier or showing any more skin than any of the other Mortal Kombat characters, underutilizes her. Honestly, if you were going to have Megan Fox show up, then Nyatra should probably be drawn in a much more lewd costume than what they're showing. And it's crazy in Mortal Kombat that you can have the most brutal violence as possible, but no romance at all. No kissing, hugging, nothing like that. Let's see, has she been in anything TV? Well, no, not really. I guess she does have some video game things, and that she's been in the 2 Transformers voice actors. But yeah, she's not really done that much. This was an interesting GameDeveloper.com article, in that who was even thinking that Final Fantasy XIV might go full free to play? Oh, 14. I misread this for 16. 16 is a full price game. 14 is the online service. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I could see Final Fantasy XIV, which probably is doing better than World of Warcraft is now, and probably where a lot of former World of Warcraft players are playing. Yeah, I could see it going full free to play, but you have to remember that Square Enix owns Final Fantasy, and Square Enix is a completely greedy company, so there's just no way that was really ever on the table. Final Fantasy XIV will go free to play only when, and I mean only when, they can no longer squeeze a single dime out of people otherwise. So that was the big story. It's 2 hours and 20 minutes into it, which I really am losing track of time here and not figuring out what is making things take so long. It is just crazy. Like, I played an hour and 20 minutes of Yu-Gi-Oh, and then I talked for another hour just on the main news, which I guess does mean that I have some opinions, which is good, or I ramble, which is bad. No major sale going on Steam right now, weirdly. Just Focus Entertainment, which is worth checking out to see what the discounts might be, because I suspect they aren't going to be much. Focus Entertainment more having a list of upcoming games. Atomic Heart at $35 might be a decent discount, where Plague Tale Requiem at $25 might still be a little too expensive. Let's see, Hotel Renovator instead of House Flipper. 30% off Shredder's Revenge. 50% off Streets of Rage 4. What's the reception on Streets of Rage 4 nowadays? Yeah, it's positive. People didn't really like it that much before. Clash of Heroes Definitive Edition is out. Dark Devotion. See if there's anything smaller here. Mixed reviewed game here. To Hell with Hell. Mixed reviewed game here. Mixed reviewed game there. So we have a Bleach Brave Souls. Now the Bleach 1000 Years Blood War, which may be what all this is all about down here, or maybe this just says Bleach Blood Souls. That anime is still going on. This very much though looks like a mobile game that has done very little to port itself to actual PC. Free to play, multiplayer focused game. It's probably a gacha game in which you're trying to collect characters and build up your team. Although inherently in the Bleach mythos, you can't have that many characters or new characters added, or you're gonna have to make the characters yourself. So in the last stream, when I was clicking on this, the audio was pausing for a second when I was jumping around. Now it's not happening. So whatever that problem was seems to have been fixed too. That does not look good. Inherently in the Bleach anime, it's a bad guy you're fighting that is way more powerful than the last bad guy you're fighting. It's not grinding out and fighting 100 hollows or other kinds of enemies. And just seeing that small bit of gameplay, that seems exactly what this game is that you're just grinding out and killing a whole bunch of hollows. This guy probably is an Arankar, a much more powerful version of a hollow. Then I recognize this guy, and I don't recognize this person, I don't recognize this person, and that might be Chad there. Yeah, I don't think I can justify putting the Bleach Brave Souls game, though, on my follow list or checking it out. No, it is rated very positively. You know what? I'm going to put this on the follow list for a different reason, though. Maybe I'll just start playing something like this on my phone. If I must have some kind of distraction, time wasting experience on my phone, maybe something like Bleach Brave Souls would make sense. So here's the Scottish game sales, which they're not really emphasizing. Let's see, the baby in yellow. Let's check that one out. One of the things that comes down to this, though, is it's cruel to say the Scottish people don't really have that different of a personality in the way they make games, or culture in the way they make games. But as a ignorant United Statesian, that's exactly the feeling I have for a lot of these games, to the point where I would have just said Broken Sword was a UK, British, like English game. And when I watch a lot of like Channel 4 and BBC UK TV, and every now and then they have a Scottish person and they may have a slightly different accent, but that they're basically talking the same way, thinking the same way, making the same kind of jokes. I'm sure historically and in the day-to-day life, Scottish people have a very slightly different lifestyle, but I would say that the United Kingdom, in its hundreds if not thousands of years of colonization, effectively mixed all of the cultures together into one fairly similar group of people. Yeah. So I really would not feel like I would just buy any of these games just because they're Scottish, and well, a lot of these games are on the follow list and the wish list. That's pretty much it. Is this a sale that's giving away free store things? I'm not sure. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. As far as point shop stickers, this baby in yellow looks like some kind of weird horror game in early access, and it doesn't have a lot of reviews, but of the people that are reviewing it, they like it. That being said, this is just not the kind of weird game I'd want to cover, so I'm gonna not do anything with it. Observation. Is mostly positive at 79%, but not particularly well received recently. I guess I'll go ahead and put that on the wish list, though. And then Might and Magic Clash of Heroes Definitive Edition. Sucks that you would have to buy this exact same game a second time, since I already own the non-definitive edition, and I don't believe there actually is any new content in the definitive edition, but whatever. It's mostly positive, it meets the other requirements. Put it on the wish list. When I ever get around to actually buying video games again, I probably would severely think about whether or not it's worth spending even a penny more to buy a game I already own. And it's not like the art is likely going to be that different overall. Although arguably they may have covered up some skin or redrawn this character. I question whether this is exactly how the elf character looked. before. She seems different. But that could just be my mind playing tricks on me. Let's see. You know what? I'll do some research on that later. We may have a point of censorship here in which they've redrawn the character to have a different style face and maybe longer hair and maybe covering up more skin. Although it's not like she had one boob out with just the boob armor for her archery skill in the first game. It was still very much family friendly in the original version of the game. But yeah, looking at these screenshots, the game really doesn't look like it was that improved compared to the original game. Alright, so this is going to bring us to the overall Video Games Chronicle news articles, which my macro broke down here, going through these stories, but it won't be. We probably won't miss anything. EA says it's going to double down on a handful of massive online communities. It will invest disproportionately in the likes of EA Sports FC, Apex Legends, The Sims, and Battlefield. It's funny to use the phrase disproportionately because inherently they're saying we're going to invest heavily in what we think will make us money, but what isn't making us money right now. Otherwise it would be proportionally or appropriately or heavily. You just not use dis as a prefix on any word to try to have a positive statement there. But I think what this is heavily also saying is that EA is getting away from like FIFA, because they're not doing FIFA games. They don't have the license anymore, and they're probably getting away from a lot of the other EA Sports games that already exist and licenses. Let's see, the next Epic Games Store titles have been revealed. 911 Operator will replace Spelldrifter, which is now free to claim. We already talked about this story. EA Sports has revealed UFC 5 ahead of an October release. Noticeably, that was one that was not listed that they were going to invest in, so that doesn't feel great. And this guy looks like he has like a heart surgery scar, which I don't know who this guy is, but maybe he does. Yeah, we were talking about Muhammad Ali and Mike Tyson there earlier. We don't care about their podcast. The WNBA team New York Liberty will have a Starfield themed court this week, which, wow, is that the level of advertisement in professional basketball now? Can you just straight up have different colors that would distract the players on the field and a logo? Well, it is women's basketball, and basically nobody watches women's basketball anyway, so it probably is making more money for the WNBA. It's probably not making any more money for the players. But yeah, that's a sad statement on WNBA, and it's a weird statement on advertising in general. We talked about the Gargoyles remastered. Jean-Claude Van Damme, Johnny Cage skin. So that just replaces Johnny Cage with Jean-Claude Van Damme. Xbox is going to reveal new Game Pass titles at the Tokyo Game Show. Its digital broadcast will showcase games from creators mainly based in Japan and across Asia. So yeah, Xbox trying to have a influence here. Although, not sure if this logo looks amazingly great to a Japanese audience. I feel like the green in general is just not working for Japanese people. And the green logo is not even working that well for the Xbox Series X. That's why they went to the black and white logo and for everything. And then just having a cat and some like sakura petals and what is this supposed to be, Mount Fuji and clouds. It's like, I don't know what you're really trying to go for here. The idea of the Xbox logo rising over Mount Fuji as if it's taller and better than Mount Fuji, or as if it's the moon, probably doesn't go well for the Japanese audience. You know, it's bolsterous. If you were going to do clouds, why not put the clouds in a smiley face pattern? But yeah, you're just kind of all over the word, all over the place. What do Japanese people like? Oh, they like Mount Fuji, they like the moon, they like clouds, they like sakura, they like cats. Like, I'm not sure how many of those things are even true. I'm glad that they've got a new person, and a Japanese lady, Mina Sato Kato, as the director of partnerships at Japan. So maybe next year we see something that can better speak to the Japanese people, which is inherently, I think, the Xbox's problem, is that they're not speaking literally the same language, but figuratively they're not speaking the same cultural language as the Japanese people. And not that I would be an expert in it, but I think I could do a lot better. Like, it's still incredibly ridiculous that they don't have some kind of mascot that is universally for Xbox Japan, whether it's a cutesy animal character or an anime girl or even an anime guy, just some kind of mascot, where in Japan everything has a mascot. It's crazy that they don't have a solution for a very big console like the Xbox Series X to fit on very small shelves in Japan as far as gaming shelves. Yeah, if anything, Microsoft is only going to really be lucky that it gets more sales in Japan based on the Japanese players being interested in Western games, not because of anything it has done in the past, unless it starts doing things better. Yeah, we already talked about this story. Apparently these games are somehow being discounted, these 50 Steam games for the Glasgow Children's Hospital, which I don't understand how that works. Like, inherently, if the games are discounted and you're paying half the price, whatever you pay is then going into the pockets of somebody, and then they would have to take the money out of that pocket and give it to the Glasgow Children's Hospital charity, and then those companies that are giving the money directly to the charity would get the tax write-offs, which is always a problem with these kinds of charity things. But if the games weren't discounted and they were just full price with half of the sales going to the charity, or more than half, or all of the profits or all the revenue going to the charity, that would make a lot more sense. And this YouTube video showing off the charity really should be on Steam's page, and doesn't seem like it is. Even when you look at this picture, as far as Scottish things, what do we have here? We have what looks like a potato with a Scottish hat. You have the Loch Ness monster, and you have a bagpiper in kilts playing a Steam Deck with a red hair and kind of Vikingish inspired haircut. At least I guess they didn't do the horns helmet for Vikings, which has never been accurate and is insulting. This might be haggis. instead of a potato. Which, okay, take your pick. There. Not a lot going on there. We already talked about this article. We already talked about that. Apparently, new Payday 3 playable characters and DLC roadmap has been revealed. This is all still articles from VideoGamesChronicle.com. Already talked about that. And then this would have been where the macro broke. But I don't think there's anything too much worth talking about here. eFootball's 2024 update arrives today, but there's still no Master League release date. Football Club 2024 PlayStation console bundles have leaked. And yeah, we've almost certainly talked about all these other stories. So then that brings us to the Gematsu articles. Let's see. Dune Spice Wars launching September 14th. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem being announced for console and PC in 2024. Which just feels like yet another different art style. And it'd be very interesting if that worked. If you could have just completely different art styles for every other game in your series. Mario has done some of that, certainly. Paper Mario, Mario RPG, slightly different art styles. Mario 64 is different than the 8-bit version of Mario in Super Mario Bros. 1, and then Super Mario World on the Super NES is more of a 16-bit art style. Zelda definitely has had, like with Wind Waker, a completely different art style than Breath of the Wild and Ocarina of Time. But arguably, in Zelda's case, it really is just bounced between realistic art styles and cartoony art styles, with cartoony art styles in Wind Waker kind of just going 3D compared to the Game Boy 8-bit cartoony art styles of previous Zelda games. One Piece Pirate Warriors 4 DLC characters Yamato and Kaido have been announced along DLC episodes. I don't recognize either one of these characters as far as One Piece is concerned. I did see a thing, it has nothing to do with video games, but the creator of One Piece specifically said there will be no romance in the live-action One Piece Netflix movie or TV series. I'm not even sure if it's a TV series or movie. And I think he's probably stuck to that same idea in the comics. I'm not sure that the writer of One Piece could write romance even if he tried. Alan Wake 2 has 11 minutes of Saga Anderson gameplay and screenshots. If you want to check that out on Gematsu. They're really going back and forth, certainly with these teasers though, between playing as two characters, and I just really question if that's actually going to work to have two characters. Alan Wake 2 is going to struggle, I think, to make me personally at least care about one character, let alone two. Liza P has a weapons showcase gameplay, which I kind of thought Liza P was already out. No, it's coming out September 19th. So, in 11 days. It'll be interesting to see how much of a reception Liza P has, because it really is just the beginning of the end of the year as far as the roller coaster of game releases. Starting probably September 19th, we're going to have one or two either AA or AAA games released, and it's just going to be big release, then big release, big release. Tokyo Game Show is going to have a whole bunch of announcements alongside those big releases. Also, it's all going to be very busy. Although it is very questionable how many announcements and releases are going to actually matter, and how many of them people are just going to ignore and not care about. Bloodstained Ritual of the Night sales have topped 2 million. First look at the Versus and Chaos modes. Wow, they're adding extra modes to Ritual of the Night. Interesting. And you gotta double check here, I guess, just to see which one this is, because there's also Bloodstained Curse of the Moon. Yeah, Ritual of the Night is the bigger 3D game. It's very positive. Let's see. Journey. Journey's on the wish list too. Okay. I thought it wasn't. It doesn't have the tag on it. Yeah, but Curse of the Moon is not listed easily here in this list. It's an interesting point to point out here. Why is the blur on already? That what am I trying to say here? 2 million sales is like 2%, I think, of the population of Japan. So yeah, it's kind of important to realize that if something is more Japanese centric, like Curse of the Moon or Ritual of the Night, whichever Bloodstained game we were just looking at, either you're getting a lot of non-Japanese sales, which I think they definitely were, or you're getting a significant percentage of the entire population of Japan, which that would be a big deal too. If you could get 1% of China or 1% of the United States or 1% of Russia to buy something, you would have a lot of sales. Or just 1% of the world. Moving on, Era, launches October 3rd. It is a roguelike action shoot 'em up dated 2 years after early access, which, yeah, I really don't have the tolerance for a game to really be in early access that long. Although somehow this game has lucked out and stayed on my follow list, or gotten added to my follow list. Character-based shooter, roguelike elements. Noticeably though, even though it's 79% positive, it only has 105 reviews from 2021. So, I don't know if this game can really be that relevant, nor do I have really enough of a justification to sit here and watch the trailer. We talked about Mortal Kombat 1 adding Nitara and having Megan Fox voice it. Grimdark is a medieval tactical RPG. No, Grimdark is making a medieval tactical game RPG called Beast for PC. Which, I'm not sure if medieval tactical is something people really want, but I'll give it a YouTube short. Bandai Namco has trademarked Operation Memories, Fractured Daydream, Shadow Labyrinth, and Pac-Man titles, which Operation Memories and Fractured Daydream, I have no idea what that's about. Or Shadow Labyrinth. Pac-Man Slider and Pac-Man Super Fast. I could see making a Pac-Man game for a phone where you're tilting the phone and making it slide, or you're swiping on the phone to make it slide. That might be interesting. Although all these trademarks could really mean nothing, and you really just need to wait till the Tokyo Game Show happens, and you'll probably have some kind of announcement around all of these games. Ys 10 Nordics details its time attack and boss rush modes, boss characters, and recapture battle skills. If you want to check all of that out on Gamatsu. DNF Duel DLC character Brawler launches September 14th. His name is just Brawler. Let's see. A Playism game show is set for September 10th. It's going to be focused on games to be showcased at the Tokyo Game Show 2023. So that's an announcement for an announcement. A physics-based platformer called Super Adventure Hand launches September 21st for Switch and PC. Let's see what the Steam page looks like for that. Come on, load in. Now, what this actually looks like is a half Glover game and a half Thing game, in the sense that you play as a hand like the Thing from the Addams Family. There might be some comedy in that, although it might also just be kind of a troll game. The Famitsu sales have been updated for the 28th through the 3rd. Let's see what's new. Pikmin 4 taking the first spot, Armored Core 6 Fires of the Rubicon in the second spot. The only new thing here is a Radiant Tail Fanfare in the 13th spot for the Switch. Legend of Heroes Trails from Zero in the 16th spot, and Legend of Heroes Trails into Azure for the Switch in the 18th spot. Taito Milestones in the 22nd spot. Hardware sales look to be pretty much exactly the same as what we're seeing on a week-to-week basis, although weirdly you get these bursts of sales for the Xbox Series S or Series X, and I think that almost certainly has to do with availability. PlayStation 4 only selling 975 units in this time period probably also talks to availability. But the lifetime sales for the Xbox Series is still incredibly low compared to even the lifetime sales of the PlayStation 5, which is not even that much compared to the lifetime sales of the 3 different versions of the Switch, which inherently Nintendo's next console is going to have to fight that. There are effectively 30 million consoles of Switches in Japan. So if 30 million Japanese people have Switches, assuming none of them have been broken or none of them are just a second Switch, how are you going to convince those how are you going to convince the Japanese people to potentially buy another 30 million of a Switch 2? It's going to have to be a console that does something fairly amazing, or it's just going to have to be called the Switch 2 and be considered a slight improvement on the current Switches, which I'm not sure people would really run the numbers that way. I think people would say Switch 2 is a line in the sand, and owning the Switch 2 is different than owning the OLED model of a Switch compared to owning the original version of the Switch. Notably, even when you do get a boost of Xbox Series S console selling, there's no physical sales to follow that because there are no discs that you can use in the Xbox Series S. This is online download only. And maybe once this year there's been a Series X game in the top 30 of the Famitsu sales. Moving on, a game called Desolatum launches October 27th. Let's see what that looks like. Weird art style. Looks like it's a point and click kind of adventure game. A game called Played Up for the PS4 and PS5 and the Xbox One and Series, and Switch launches November 2nd. It's a cooking roguelike management game. It first launched on Steam. This would have been a game that I would have ignored because it's just not really the kind of game I'd want to play, and that's why it's not on the followed list. It may have been at some point. A game called Hot Lap Racing has been announced for Switch and PC. They're calling it a Simcade Racer due out in 2024. I don't know what Simcade really means. Half simulation, half arcade game, so not actually doing either one correctly. I'll make a YouTube short on it. Though, a game called Stray Souls launches October 31st, which notably this is like the first announcement of any kind of horror game that I can really think of. And it's pretty much missing Halloween. It's funny, you have an R backwards, then a U, ES, high, low, and then O2. Or you have a ST, A, SOLS, COMOUT, TS, HALEEN 23, or STSO COMT. Yep. No matter how you read this, it doesn't make sense to stylize your text this way. And yeah, I'm completely just unaffected by horror things, so looking at this picture, I mean, I'm not even paying attention to it. I'm more interested in the text layout than the spooky character being shown to me. Weirdly, Stray Souls here doesn't really have that much of a creepy boy imagery in any of these screenshots, and I always find that strange that you just have a very different experience visually between one advertisement and press release and the next. Let's see. Payday Pearl and Joy trailer, screenshots, and post-launch content roadmap has been announced. You can check out Gamatsu if you're interested in that. Effectively, I'm not interested in Payday. I do kind of feel like my banners at the top here have lost some of their luster compared to the news tickers. I feel like there's something more that could happen here instead of just that happening. Maybe I could squeeze it down to just being one of the one half as high. Yeah, that might work. Instead of being two lines covering up both tickers, maybe it should be one line just covering up the top ticker. I'll think about that later. EA Sports UFC 5 has been announced for the PS5 and Xbox Series, which different screenshot here for UFC 5 than the other screenshot we saw from Video Games Chronicles, which is interesting that there would be two screenshots to pick from. And I guess I'll leave it at that. You can make your own decision as to whether there's more interest in UFC 5 based on this character who I couldn't name versus the other character who I couldn't name. Let's see. Gargoyles Remastered coming out October 19th, which I guess technically Gargoyles Remastered might be a Halloween type game, but Halloween games are kind of effectively dead, I think, at this point, as far as trying to release a horror game around Halloween. And at least for this year and probably for next year going forward, and probably going forward also, the thought of playing really spooky games and scheduling them in October on my channel is something I've given up on. It was too much to manage. Instead of just making content and scheduling it as I make it as fast as possible. Plus, I've kind of run out of really spooky games that I want to play. King's Bounty 2 is now available for the PS5 and Xbox Series. Has this been on Steam? Yes, it's been since 2023. We're increasingly just seeing more and more games come to consoles, although a lot of them are not particularly that well received too. And then I guess at a certain level you're going to hit a saturation point where there's just not that many old Steam games, PC games that can be ported to consoles. The game Island of Insight has an open playtest and now available. This is a weird game where you fly around and then solve puzzles like The Witness, somewhat like The Witness, which seems a little weird that you would give people the ability to fly around when the puzzle element is the big deal. Although this is a shared world puzzle game, but it's single player, so I don't know how you share a world in any way that way. Do you solve puzzles and then it uploads to a cloud and then the puzzle gets solved through multiple people solving a puzzle? That doesn't make sense. Would that even be considered single player at that point? Yeah. I'm just not sure what shared world means, other than all the puzzles are sharing a world. But clearly you're seeing other characters here, so you have to assume that these are AI characters, which that does address a potential complaint around The Witness, where you walk around in The Witness and you're just in this empty world with no other people. Now I don't know why they're really comparing it to Skyrim, though. And honestly, being able to just fly around really makes it feel like there was supposed to be a different kind of game here, and they just added puzzles at the last second. But on the other hand, there is maybe a feel of something like Uru or Myst Online that they're trying to evoke here. The shared world allows for seamless interactions with friends and other players, offering a sense of camaraderie and belonging inside the game without being intrusive to your solo journey. So I think it is a lot like the game Journey, where you're going to see other characters, but they're not going to be able to really solve puzzles for you or do something to spoil a puzzle for you, which I don't know if you really need that, but it's an interesting experiment to say the least. Moving on, Gamatsu has an article here saying My Dearest, as a company, I don't know that company, announces a virtual reality multiplayer shooter called Brazen Blaze. There is some anatomical inaccuracies with this lady in that she has an incredibly unrealistic stomach line here, an hourglass figure. You just cannot have hips that wide and then a stomach that small unless you are not human. The neck is also a little long, head's a little big, arm with the fist on it, it's giant, thighs are giant. Ignoring that, a VR shooter game, 3 versus 3 smack and shoot VR action game, is almost certainly not going to work, in that it probably won't have enough people playing it. That being said, I basically want to make a YouTube short based on anything that puts out a press release, so I'll make a YouTube short on that. Xbox's digital broadcast announcement for an announcement. All of this happening like in maybe 2 weeks instead of 1 week. But I feel like games are going to come out and announcements are going to happen before. I feel like we maybe have 1 week and then it is going to be a roller coaster ride of just announcements and games coming out. Scapegoat website teases a new game announcement on September 14th. Again, the company I don't recognize. I should be recognizing a lot more of these publishers and developer companies, but man, there's so many of them. Ys X Nordics has a character's introduction #1 trailer. If you want to check that out on Gamatsu. And then Like a Dragon, Gaiden, the man who erased his name, details the Coliseum, the Cabaret Club, Pocket Circuit, Karaoke, Boutique Arcade, and Master System games and darts, which that is just a long list of mini games that you can do to raise your levels or raise your income. So it definitely feels like this is going to be Like a Dragon, a Like a Dragon game. So here's kind of a, not cabaret, this would be the, well, they're calling it the Cabaret Club, but that's not really what cabaret means. These are just this looks just to me like a hostess bar where you pay to have a pretty lady sit next to you and drink with you, and you pay for her drinks, and it's very expensive, but it's not really prostitution per se. They talk to you and drink with you, and you have a good time, is the general sale. Although a lot of these things also, like, not that many people actually engage with them. There are people in Japan that engage with hostess bars, but a lot of Japanese people would say, no, I can't afford that, I don't have time for that, I wouldn't do that. Now weirdly, hostess bars I've never heard of don't have a swimming pool in which a lady would get in the pool with you. But cabaret means something different. Cabaret means the ladies would be dancing or singing on stage, in my mind, and that they would be in some scantily clad feather dancing type outfit. Pocket Circuit is another bar, and it looks to me like it's maybe centering around remote control cars. Yeah. And then you have a karaoke mode, which is just singing along. The boutique is a dress-up mode. And then you have actual Sega games being inside of it. So yeah, it seems like it's going to be like a Dragon game in the sense that you're going to run around and do a bunch of mini game stuff. Mini game things. I still really haven't figured out whether I'd want to ever play any of these Like a Dragon games. And it's questionable whether this is the best one to start with. It might be. The newest one is the best one. It might not be. Again, we have the Jean-Claude Van Damme skin. And then that brings us to the GameDeveloper.com, which we very possibly have already talked about all of these stories. Yeah, talked about that. Talked about that. GameDeveloper.com has this article. Teen Roblox developers are risk being underpaid due to low conversion rates. All development, no pay. There is straight up accusations that that this is just bringing back more child labor. More Perfect Union is a YouTube channel that I think may be gaining some more followers. They're fairly like anti-capitalist. They're closer to being pro-union and more leaning in that direction. I wouldn't go as far as to say they're actually socialists or communists or anything like that. They're still running a YouTube channel and probably running ads on their YouTube channel, but yeah, they're fairly against big business and abuses in particular in big business. And they are pointing out a real concern, certainly that every parent should have, that kids would be advertised to become developers for something like Roblox, to make Roblox a bunch of profit. YouTube, Twitch, things like that, same idea. Like being a YouTuber is going to make YouTube a lot more money than it would a kid. But yeah, Roblox is profiting off child labor, is not really a dishonest accusation to make, in my opinion. Let's see, we already talked about Jagex May being sold off again, and then we talked about that. Is the YouTube's instant play games reaching public testing? Wouldn't be surprised if, even if these instant play games are very, very popular, YouTube just gives up on them. Like Google and Alphabet and YouTube have notoriously never stuck with a significant amount of their ideas and tests. And you might have a best case scenario where instant play games come out on YouTube, Twitch introduces something similar, and then Twitch has to stick to that idea because they want to compete and they don't really have anything else to offer. Twitch really needs a major restructuring. Like I don't want an Elon Musk to take over Twitch, but if it takes somebody like Elon Musk taking over Twitch just to see any new features added to Twitch, then it feels like that might be worth it. There are more people talking about Twitch because of ASMR ear licking in the past few weeks than there are people talking about Twitch because it added any new feature or did anything new or different in the past year. And that's a real problem. If you're being overshadowed by controversies instead of just announcing new features. Even if you're just announcing and promising and never delivering, Twitch would be in a better position than what they are in. Starfield delivered the biggest launch in Bethesda's history, apparently, according to Game Developer. And then the Day of the Devs open submission for new showcases at the Game Awards. Day of the Devs being a event that was run by Double Fine and I Am 8-Bit, but also showing up at the Game Awards, so there's a lot of like overlapping groups here. Arguably, I would, if I was in charge of Microsoft, I'd say, Double Fine, you're not going to do Day of the Devs as an event and sponsor it by Double Fine and I Am 8-Bit. It's going to be Microsoft and I Am 8-Bit, or just Microsoft alone. And I probably would argue that Double Fine should just work on making their next game. Like, Double Fine does not deserve to exist in 4 to 8 years if they're just gonna make one more Psychonauts game, or not even make that much. Like, Double Fine as a company needs to be churning out a new game every couple of years. They're big enough to do that and creative enough to do that. Otherwise, they need to be just a development team or support team for other Xbox, Microsoft companies. Alright, well then that brings us to the Steam fall list cleanup, which, let's see, we have something from July called Kaizu Adventures, which doesn't look like anything, so we'll take that off. Then we have something from June called the Katydids Incident. Did I make a YouTube short after this game? And I must have been really generous to put that on the fall list. And we have something for 2021 called Kate Kit. It is not relevant at all, so that can leave the fall list. Next we have something from April, which I'll give this some more time and leave it on the fall list. Then we have Cartwright Drifter, which free-to-play platform crossover, deep cartoon character customization, but no real licensed characters. It's online PvP only, and at some point they're saying it was review bombed, or off-topic review activity is what they call it. Yeah, Cartwright Drift doesn't look like it's interesting enough to really want to play, particularly as a free-to-play game with in-app purchases. I'd much rather have either Garfield type characters or WB characters. It's interesting, WB characters actually don't have a kart racing game. Disney has one and Pixar has one. Next we have one from April called Karpov. I'm gonna leave this and give it some more time, but it's probably never gonna get 30 reviews. And then we have a VR game called Carnage Chronicles, which I'll leave on the fall list. We are hitting a point though that starting January 2024, I probably just need to start removing VR games. Karma Zoo is not out yet. And then Karakuri Kangeki only has one review from January and it's VR, so we'll take that off the fall list. Yep. I do feel like I'm probably doing such a good job cleaning up the fall list that I'm going to start running out of old fall list games to look at. Let's see, this is 90% positive and with 25 reviews. Kind of want to say yes to this, but you know what, I'm just going to leave it for now. Cal the Kangaroo is very positive, so we can go ahead and put that on the wish list. Let's reload that. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm looking at things on the fall list in case I didn't explain this, and if it has at least 30 reviews and it's mostly positive, it's making it to the wish list. If it doesn't have 30 reviews and it's been out for a while, it leaves the fall list. Or if for some other reason I just don't think I'd really want to buy it and play it, to the point where I do encourage people, if they want to support me, to friend me on Steam and look at my wish list and buy me something off of that as a way of just a one-time gift. And so I'm curating a very long wish list, but a curated wish list of games that are at least good enough for me to want to actually own it. And now we're going to look at all the new games that came out on Steam and see if any of them are good enough to be put on the fall list as the first step to potentially being on the wish list. This game Colosseum, I'm gonna be generous. Celloseum is the name of it, not Colosseum. Square City Builder doesn't look like anything. The White Chamber as a point and click adventure might be something. It's a different art style, although I'm not sure it's a great art style. Red Tie Runner looks like nothing. Fling D Block, again nothing. Monster Path. You know what I need to do? I need to make a small, not annoying ding sound effect every time I de-blur or blur something. Yeah. That would work fairly well for me. And I can do that. I can make an audio source, an audio file that would just loop back and forth. Just saying, you could say something like blurred, 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 blurred. Although maybe not actually say a word, maybe just play a note and play only in my headphones as an audio source. And then I could mute, or in the case of OBS, blind, not show that audio source. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It has nothing to do with this game though. I'll put this game on the fall list. Yep. Inspiration sometimes just comes out of nowhere. So this is just a Codebreaker game. Now weirdly, I don't think I've actually seen a good version of Codebreaker on Steam, although Tabletop Simulator very possibly would already support that. But I'm gonna give this a follow and give it a chance. Here we have something called Sans Logic. There might be something here. This doesn't just feel like an asset flip game. But then, yeah, if I heard blurred, that would help me without having to look on my second monitor to see if I'm blurred or not. For the most part, I've built it down to a habit to unblur the auto blurred things, and the blur is only in existence because I want to cover adult games. Do I want to do anything with Red Crucible Phoenix Rising? No. I'll give it a chance. We didn't see any adult games on Wednesday, and I wouldn't be super surprised if we didn't see any adult games today. But I would be fairly surprised if we didn't see any adult games, say, by Monday. And that is no longer a problem because we have our first adult game here. This is a game called The Lust City, and it is 3D CGI ladies with a realistic color palette as opposed to bright, colorful anime color styles. All the ladies are kind of like, for lack of a better term, in leather native outfits. Like they look kind of like they're Amazonian characters or in the jungle. Looks like it might be a tribe of all women that you get stuck in. You get a decent variety of ladies, different proportion in bust size, different hair colors. It's tagged as a dating sim. I wouldn't be surprised if it isn't more of just a visual novel though. It doesn't really feel like there's too much of a variety in any kind of fetishes though. There's just a lot of nudity and that's kind of it. It's $10.79. Seems like there's another game it's bundled with called Lust Theory. It's English only. And I guess it's really focusing on the fetish of having a harem. Now, I have to say it's probably lying here because it says it has 7,800 plus images, which the only way you'd get that is if you're counting every single frame in a video. It's also saying it has 640 plus animations, which, I mean, technically that might be true, but it's not a number that you really should use. It says it has a branching story, scene navigation, scene replay. But I really am not seeing any actual like mini games or anything. It weirdly has 28 achievements, which there's something to be said about that. Certainly. But yeah. Maybe a little expensive at $10.79, but if it's actually delivering on what it promises, it looks like a fairly decent adult game. Moving on, we have a game called Synced that is already mixed, which is a free-to-play co-op shooter, so I'm not going to bother to put it on the follow list because of its poor reception already. Same would normally be true for NBA 2K 2024, but it is relevant enough at a 10% positive to make a YouTube short and just show off how terribly received it is. I have yet to have a lot of feedback on any of my YouTube shorts, even though I've had a decent amount of views on the shorts, although relatively small compared to other shorts from other creators. But maybe through going the dark side in anger, more people would be willing to comment on shorts. Although in general, I just question whether YouTube Shorts is really built around the idea of commenting or interacting in any way. It feels to me like YouTube Shorts are designed to be fairly passive things. Here we have a desktop pet software in this case using anime girl garage kit concepts. Garage kits are 3D models made out of plastic that you would put together. It's really a Japanese only thing. And a garage kit doesn't inherently have to be an anime girl. There's plenty of garage kits of like robots and other things. Yeah. I question how much of the garage kit aspect really would play a role. And to me, I would assume this is just a desktop pet application, which isn't really a game, so I'm not going to put it on the follow list. And then let me just double check to see that this is technically YouTube family friendly. We have had this problem ever since YouTube started to seemingly once again crack down on adult content. In that we've seen particularly anime adult content just not label itself for the adult section. They used the stick, they didn't use a carrot. So here we increasingly are seeing once again a lot of people using tags of sexual content, nudity, and hentai and not safe for work in their game, and then selling your generic slide puzzle game with maybe some visual novel elements, which I'd say arguably this looks not even like it's that generic of a slide puzzle game, because that's a little weird for a slide puzzle game. This also looks like this is probably either a Chinese game or a Japanese game that's not really been translated. Weirdly, it's free to play with no in-app purchases, English and Chinese. And then you have the mature content here saying it has nudity and sexual content, but then it is ridiculous that you can have any kind of mature content description show up on your page and then it not end up in the adult section, which just leaves the adult section underutilized and underfulfilled. Like, this game probably doesn't really even have that much nudity or any nudity at all. I wouldn't be surprised if it's actually censored completely and there is no nudity. That being said, it doesn't make a lot of sense to have an adult section when only those who are playing by the appropriate labeling rules and only the most hardcore of hardcore or softcore pornography games are in the adult section. No amount of violence will get you in the adult section, which is a separate argument certainly to make. It would be weird if Mortal Kombat 1 for instance came out and was in the adult section of Steam, but logically it really should be. It is super bloody, gory, and violent. So put it in the adult section, make it be known that it's in the adult section and that the adult section exists at all. Although in all fairness, the adult section is pretty much for United States people, and United States people do really have the idea of there being a red curtain in a video store, which this is a very old mentality that doesn't actually exist, but you would go behind the red curtain and that's where all the porn was, and that's really what the adult section on Steam is. It's not what it should be. Arguably they should maybe get rid of the adult section completely and just have a default rating system that Steam runs itself for all games, and it should just pull you when you enter when you make an account as far as what kind of content you really want to see and what kind of content you don't want to see, based on its algorithm to recommend games, which I'm not sure Steam has that good of an algorithm to recommend games in the first place. But yeah, having its own rating system I think would be very useful. appropriately advertising would also be very useful too. And while it hasn't reached the point of Valve, it's worth pointing out that there are several states trying to put very onerous laws in place, or have put in very onerous laws as far as adult websites, sometimes specifically targeting certain websites to make sure that 100% of all the people that go on the website are not underage, to the point where they're requiring you to check like government certified or government issued IDs, and that's a little ridiculous that you would give your driver's license or give a social security card to, say, Pornhub, just to look at a Pornhub. If a similar thing started to happen on YouTube, on YouTube or on Steam, that would be very weird too. Although in Steam's case, since you're only buying games anyways, there are free-to-play games, but it wouldn't be that crazy for Steam to say, you don't have to buy anything now, but we need your credit card on file before you can even enter and look at games. But that would totally kill like the idea of buying things with Steam cards in the first place. I'll give this game a chance. But as a store, it wouldn't be that crazy if you walked into a bar to be ID'd or via like a driver's license, and so it would be even less crazy to be ID'd just by a credit card. And credit cards have your date of birth on them. Of course, you never know whose credit card you're using, so it's still pretty impossible to verify that it isn't in a kid on the other side of a website entering in their parents' credit card. Next, we have a 2D, more colorful anime RPG Maker style game called You've Been Banished. That's an adult game. You're seeing your standard ugly RPG Maker elements in one long, I'd say aquamarine haired anime lady. Fairly big boobs. There's a tentacle screenshot. There's a goblin as an enemy. It's been listed for $9.99. Now, weirdly, the adult story and graphics is a DLC. It supports English, Japanese, and Chinese, which for a while there, it definitely felt like game developers were finding a nice happy medium there, where their game would not be hidden behind the adult store section, the adult only section, which most people can't see and don't know about on Steam, because they were putting all the adult content in the free DLC patch. But Valve doesn't seem to like any solution, nor does it seem to even really prefer any solution. Their preference seems to be to probably just try and censor out adult games altogether, but there's no consensus, I think, amongst the people who make decisions in Valve, and that's why there's randomness around it. Inherently, I still feel like even in the adult sections, it's weird to have screenshots that are adult oriented and not blurred and censored. I think it would fix a lot of things if all the screenshots were blurred always, even when you're on the page, unless you clicked a button to specifically see that specific screenshot every time, which that'd be a lot of extra clicking, but whatever. Or you know, just black bars and too hot for Valve, too hot for Steam would also work on the screenshots. I don't think it makes a lot of sense the way they're doing it now. Next game we have is also an adult game. It's back to 3D CGI art style this time, called Sex Play the Sauna, which I feel like there was another game called Sex Play that came out just a couple days ago. Yeah, looks like there's basically just 2 3D CGI characters, and they're in a spa sauna section. I think this is probably just a visual novel for $1.49. It's English only. Yeah, it doesn't visually look particularly impressive. And when you have cases like this where games like this are bundled, you know they're not that good or that long. $1.49, it's probably just a couple minutes, 20 minutes, 10 minutes long. There's a HD adult bundle that's included in that has 105 other items, pretty much all the same game, I'm sure, just being resold and repackaged. Same 3D CGI models in slightly different poses, slightly different backgrounds. It's all very low effort. And that's the thing I'd like to see improved more than anything, is better quality adult games, if adult games must exist. Grunenberg here. You know what, I'm gonna be generous and put this on the follow list. It's probably not a good reason to do that, but we'll see. Next we have yet another adult game called Sex with Ogre. Now I feel like there was a one called With Goblin before, and now they've just taken the concept and spun it around to a different 3D CGI ogre character. Doesn't really seem like much. They're just in a field, and that's, I think, pretty much it. $3.39. It claims to support all 103 languages on Steam. This would clearly be on the fetish of non-consensual, and I guess in Japan they have this ugly bastard fetish where the guy is incredibly ugly, and ogres might be somewhat around that too. I don't know who really would be interested in this though. This feels very much like a troll game more than an actual adult game that people would want. Yep. Book of Hero as a regular game might be something, so I'll give it a follow. I made this game in 3 days is basically telling on yourself and telling me not to care about it. City Idol. I'll give that a chance. It looks like we've got a lot of games still. Maybe that is because I have talked too much. We have some kind of VR underwater game. It might be something. Kush's Amazing Adventure. Looks like it's like a Chinese RPG, but I would somewhat applaud the paper cutout art styles here, but the rest of the visuals look pretty terrible. This is Korean only for 89 cents. Yeah, I talk probably more about Japanese only games coming out, but we are starting to see a lot of Korean only games also come to Steam. Which, yeah, the Asian markets seem to be increasingly willing to go to Steam. Shipwrecked here doesn't look like anything. Is this an adult game? I don't think it is. I think it's just a garbage game, asset flip game. Yeah. Zombie Horde Dominator. Some of this is not terrible. It's the idea of having like very specific weird monster characters. But as you go further in these screenshots, you have some really ugly visuals. And then you can see it's pretty much an asset flip survival game eventually with guns. Next we have Roadrunner's Playground, which, yep, doesn't really look like anything of interest. Here we have a Only Up clone, even though Only Up has been taken down, and called Into the Sky. Although they're saying it's a puzzle platformer, so maybe I'm too quick to judgment. Maybe there is a bit more to it than just a, yeah, it really isn't an Only Up clone, is it? Because you're having consistent 3D models of an actual idea and art style, and the platforming isn't just random going in circles from the looks of it either. Alright, we'll give that a follow. Next we have what looks like a strategy placement game, probably Chinese only. $16.99 English, Chinese, Japanese, Korean. 3D chess strategy role-playing game, it says. I would really question whether this game is playable in English though. Yeah. And even at that, well, it kind of has a nice little visual polish to it. It's not gonna get a short from me. Now this next game weirdly says it only has slightly bare clothing and boob jiggle, and yet from the thumbnail I thought it was going to be an adult game for sure from the title. You have Love in the Dark, and then you have some kind of monster here. I don't know what the deal is this, and then you have this thumbnail, but then every screenshot here is just showing a background, which I question that. It's a multiplayer horror game. Let me watch the cinematic here. The description sounds ridiculous. A loving couple receives an invitation from a wealthy man for an event. Despite my concern, she insists on going. To protect her, I decide to secretly join and keep her safe. It looks to me almost like it's trying to be like a Left 4 Dead multiplayer game. And it has a weird eating and drinking animation that they're focusing on. And then I'm seeing some what feels almost like asset flip monsters. So there's this like vampire lady, as far as I can tell. Yeah. So I think this is an effort to make a horror game and imply there's more than there really is. And inherently there's a problem with the idea of, oh, a monster walks around and her boobs jiggle. That's just normal. That's normal for most females of a certain bust size. That shouldn't have to be in the mature content section. So inherently I feel like this game is being deceptive in its adult mature content warning. Slightly bare clothes in a monster is not that surprising either. And you definitely paint yourself into a bad position when you make a multiplayer horror game, because first of all, you've got to get multiple people playing it, and second of all, you have to get multiple people wanting to play a horror game, and there's a very small subset of gamers that really want to play horror games. And then third of all, do you want to play a multiplayer horror game where the monster is a vampire lady with big boobs? That's just niche upon niche upon niche, or subgenre upon subgenre upon subgenre. Alien Investigator doesn't look like anything. Let's see, we have a game called Non-Fellows. Apparently, find a way through a zombie city, it says. So this feels like this is probably two different games. You have like a point and click aspect, and then you have a top-down garbage looking game. And this looks like this might be a mini game of some sort. It kind of feels like it should just be a visual novel, if that's all they could really do, instead of whatever this is. Yeah. Why bother to add any mini games at all? This is all you can add. English Russian, it being Russian tells me quite a bit. I imagine. Garbage game, basically. Planet of War, The Legend of Fu is just an RPG maker game. We can dismiss that quickly. Game called Increment. Looks like it's a bunch of buttons and levers for VR with DLC for buttons. It's probably an idle game if I was to guess. But why would you want to play an idle game in VR? Speaking of VR, I saw a video on YouTube or the internet somewhere where this father, this terrible father, bad father, I won't say terrible, but had a little girl, probably 11, 12, doing that VR game where you're walking on a plank outside of a skyscraper, so you're very high up, and so she's perfectly trusting and fine in the VR headset to walk right up to the edge of the plank, and then the father tells her to jump, and she's like an inch away from the TV and the game console. So not only is he telling the kid, which listens completely and jumps, she's fully trusting, she listens and jumps, but he's telling her to jump in a dangerous way. She jumps forward and the game pauses because she's outside of the playfield area, and she nearly crashes her whole body into a glass, it looked like a glass, like TV console. And worse, on top of all of that, and the bad father doing that, he saves her But the way he saves her is he grabs one of her arms and is dangerously close, potentially to yanking her arm out of the socket. So, yeah, bad dad. It's pretty bad, I would say, in general, to have your kids in VR anyways, if you're not going to monitor them and have them doing a fear of heights exercise there when the kid clearly has no actual fear of heights is silly. I won't say it's wrong, but yeah, several mistakes were made there. In particular, the video getting put up online too. Parents like seeming to think that that was appropriate too. Anyways, moving on. We have about 5 more games. I've been going 4 hours. Fireworks Frenzy here doesn't look like anything. I guess the gamble is, will we see another adult game in the next 5 games? Winter Valley Hike is just an asset flip, like walking simulator. Let's see. Duelist looks like it might be a visual novel worth looking at, but I would say the screenshots are so similar I'm not going to make a YouTube short on it. And then we have another hidden object game, which I'll make a YouTube short on that. Then we have Cube Jump, which looks like nothing. And then our last game here is Creature Rumble, which looks like some kind of card game. Which again, I'll put it on the follow list. Yeah, I'll make a YouTube short on it too. We did have considerably more games ending up getting YouTube shorts today compared to Wednesday and Monday, but yeah, it still all feels a little lackluster. If I hadn't been rambling so much today, this probably should have been a 3-hour stream. Again, I guess, did the chat decorum work? Maybe. I'll ask for more feedback if how people feel about the new chat decorum and the way it's phrased and written. That's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to support me further, there's some links in the description box. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.